Bam.
No talking during the stream. Okay, now you can talk.
When you were playing that driving game the other day, you read the chat and went off the road. You see I said no texting and driving.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. All right. Hey,
All right.
Chris. We ready to start this thing?
Gotcha.
Aaron?
Yeah, man, I'm good.
Okay. Oh, my gosh.
I'm going to try to nail this opening, but
Well,
never.
We're screwed already. What did I do with my... I created... Oh, okay. I forgot what I did.
I do that every minute of every day.
Okay. So, ARG. We'll let it run a couple seconds. You can kick us off.
Hey everyone, welcome to another action-packed episode of ARG Presents. He's the Cadillac, John Butt of Car Schaller, and I'm the dinosaur, Amigo Aaron. And this week, we're going to be discussing arcade games. Boat, what do you think about arcades?
I think arcades are pretty good, and I especially love discussing them with our third guest this week, John Marshall.
And there he is.
Hi, guys.
So, what was your question again? What do you think about arcades?
Yeah, what do you
What
think
kind of
about
a question
arcades?
is that? I hate arcades. Don't look behind you.
Episode over.
No, man, I love arcade machines. Arcade machines are great. They envelop the user in a way that a console never can.
like environmental arcade, you could sit down at the arcade.
It's not
Shooting
just,
games
It's not just that. It's the fact that you are sitting or you're bellying up to this single-purpose device. You know, it is there to play video games. You're not going to watch TV on it. You're not going to do anything else on it. It is there. The controls at your hands, there's not a keyboard. There's nothing else there but a stick and some buttons or whatever. You are there solely to play games. Not only that, you have the artwork that surrounds you. Sometimes you got the bezel artwork and the artwork on the sides of the cabinet, the marquee art. All of that's part of it. The distinctive sound of an arcade machine speaker, totally different than a TV. Everything about the experience is great.
You know, I like the sound of an arcade in general. There's sort of a gently woven digital tapestry of noise that's happening in the background. You can always distinctively hear certain machines that are peeping up now and again. Your Galagas or your Karate Champs or your Dragon Slayers are all peeping in the background. It does. Really having the arcade experience is something that's hard to put together on a console. Some people, and they've tried. If you'll recall, remember the Xbox 360 had that arcade
Which
gimmick.
I thought was a neat thing, but it was very short-lived. It did not do well.
Well, I thought it was a good idea until I played it and realized that they did a kind of a half job. Did you do a lot of arcade playing back in the day, John?
Probably not as much as you guys, but yeah, I went as often as I could. Starting with Aladdin's Castle up there at the mall.
Sure.
And then when they opened the one down in Canal City, I went
Yes.
down there a lot.
I used to go to both those. The Aladdin's Castle at the mall was known for its wide array of Laserdisc games. That was sort of its thing. That's one of the few places I saw Vegas Battle. I saw, of course, they had Dragon Slayer with the extra screen on top, which was awesome. They had a Cliffhanger. Some of the more obscure Laserdisc games. And then the Canal Mall arcade was the first place I ever saw Mortal Kombat. It's funny you remember this stuff.
What was the Canal Mall arcade called?
Well, it was, I don't know, I don't think it had a name, did it? I don't remember it having a name. I just thought it was the arcade.
It wasn't Power Play, was it?
You know, I don't remember. Some of the mall ones, they didn't all have, some that just said arcade and you walked in. Yeah. But they had here's a weird one. They had that weird Laserdisc NFL game. Have you ever seen that?
No.
Bizarre. You remember that? It was like
No.
It was a game where the Raiders played, I can't remember, the Broncos or something like that, but it was a Laserdisc football game. Very wacky.
Are you sure you're not imagining
Nope,
that?
it's a real game.
I've never heard of that before.
It's a real game. Next time we do an arcade stuff, you can put that on your list. Do you remember frequenting certain arcades, and do you have the memories like I do of the games that were in the arcades? Because you're a little younger.
So growing up, when the arcades were in their heyday, I was slightly afraid of the arcades because I was very small. You know, what year would you say was the peak of, say, Goldmine at the mall?
You know, a lot of people think that, and we've talked about this before, a lot of people think arcades...
I'm not talking about arcades. I'm talking about Goldmine
right,
at the mall.
Right, but I'm saying a lot of people think that arcades in general peaked in, say, 83, 84. For me, I would say probably 87 or 88 later. And, and the reason I say that is I was older, especially to the point where I had my own car. That for me, they peaked because I could go there whenever I wanted.
So this is another self-referential thing, just like the music thing. You were old enough to appreciate the arcade at just coincidentally the time where they peaked.
Well, I liked fighting games, okay? Fighting games really didn't come into their own until later on. Plus, you had the good thing about arcade, you know, in the late 80s, you had all the good games that were from the early 80s. Plus, you had, like, games that were beautiful. I mean, there were games I'm not even really into, but they came out and you're just like, holy smokes, that's the best thing I've ever seen. Ridge Racer comes to mind. I remember the first time I saw the arcade version, I couldn't believe how incredible it looked. Like, there's no way this could get any better, you know. And I thought the same thing when I saw Outrun, too. So, it's, you know, it steps up. But I would say that was my favorite time.
So, you know, the arcade peaked in 87. I was 6 years old in 87.
I know you guys sort of got screwed on that.
So yeah, I never went to an arcade that was the classic arcade, you know, smoky, dark. By the time that I started my arcade journey, it was in the early to mid 90s, and the gold mines had shut down and they were replaced by Tilt in the mall,
which were horrible.
And it was very brightly lit. The redemption scene was starting to come out, and that was no good. A lot of my arcade memories, good arcade memories, actually came from Showbiz Pizza, because they had, I remember distinctly playing Neo Geo machines and things like that that were really cool.
I remember, it was the first place, was a Showbiz where I played Final Fight, of all things. And I sat down with Brent and we beat it. And we were very impressed. Like, this game came out of nowhere. You know, it looked beautiful. And you know, I used to go to parties at those places, and slowly but surely the video games evaporated, just like regular arcades. And because kids were more into, and my kids sort of the same way, they're more into ticket stuff. They want to get a goodie, you know, despite the fact you just literally put in a quarter and it's gone like that.
Right.
You know, now if you walk into an arcade, it's almost all the redemption stuff, and very few arcade games still make the cut.
Now, have you been to any of the newer arcades that are kind of capitalizing on nostalgia, perhaps combined with a bar? Have you been to any of those before?
I have been to a couple. There was an outfit in Lexington called Geeks that had it was a bar, and it had a stage, and it had an arcade. And I knew this place was doomed because I was a geek, and no self-respecting geek would go in there with all those crazy drunks. And then on top of that, the shows they would bring in, well, I mean, who would you expect to play at a bar like that? Well, you wouldn't expect, say, like a local speed metal legend.
Right.
Or, you know, heavy metal stuff. Now, I like that kind of music, but I could just tell, like, this thing's going to fail, and it failed like that. But other people have found the secret formula, and these little barcades are popping up all over the place. I don't know if I don't think, are there any in Charleston that you know of?
Not that I know of. I looked at one that was in Columbus called the 8-Bit Bar, I think, something like that.
Oh, have you been
But
there?
they're always in combination with a bar.
Yeah.
No, I haven't been there, but I was.
Well, that's where your revenue comes from.
Oh, yeah.
You know, now, I've been lucky enough in recent years to visit two pretty spectacular arcades. One was in when I went to Disney World on a business trip. In downtown Disney, which is like a shopping center just adjacent to the parks, they have a huge arcade that's multi-floor. It might be 5 floors tall, and on the top floor there is literally almost every classic game that you can think of.
Oh, yeah.
And it's one of these things where you pay a flat fee, I think it was $20 to get in, and you can play as much as you want. So that was neat. But the coolest place I've been to was in Chicago. Not your favorite place in the world, but one of my favorite places. Galloping Ghost Arcade in Chicago.
I've heard nothing but good things.
That place is amazing. And what makes it cool is, you know, the Disney thing, like you'd expect, you know, it was all everything there was in great shape and everything, but there really wasn't a lot of soul to it. Galloping Ghost, there were high score challenges everywhere. They had cool stuff up on the walls. You could tell that there were regulars that really cared about the place, and it was just an awesome experience.
The funny thing, and it's sort of sad, and you're somewhere between us in terms of age, but when I was a kid, and arcades were booming, and I mean before '87, they were everywhere. In fact, as we sit here in your basement, there was an arcade less than a mile from here, at the grocery store right up the street here. They had an arcade in that, and it was a good arcade. They had, in this extra little area they'd built, there was an arcade, and it was nice. Grocery stores had arcades. Every convenience store had an arcade machine. Bowling alleys had awesome arcades. I mean, awesome ones. Not like now where there's a couple games. And so everyone was video game crazy, and it was great for a while. Sears had an arcade called the Wizard's Den. I mean, Sears had an arcade. No one even thinks about that. It was a pretty good arcade. It was a cool time to be a kid if you were into video games. And probably a decent time for a parent, because you just give the kid 50 cents or $1, send them to the Wizard's Den, and you go over and do your thing. And I remember the Wizard's Den in particular because it was right beside the Sears candy counter, which is also gone. So man, I feel like I said, I'm the dinosaur. I remember all this stuff, but it was cool. I'm glad I got to see it, and it certainly had an impact on me since I sort of got my own little tiny Aaron arcade together based on, and Wizards Den was in my head a lot, and my brother too, when we put it together.
Well, speaking of that, we should probably talk a little bit about our respective arcade machine collections.
All right, go ahead.
I'll start because mine is much smaller than Aaron's. I've owned a grand total of 4 arcade machines in my life. The very first one was when I lived in a small apartment in Newport News. And when you live in a small apartment that's on the 2nd floor, what a better thing to do than haul a huge honking arcade machine up the stairs. So I went to a local distributor who, this is the only workplace that I've been into where people are just pot just everywhere.
Hey, that's my current workplace. That's drug lab.
That's how I knew it was something special. And anyway, I was like, man, you got any old machines or anything? And he's like, well, I got this old Golden Tee, but it doesn't work, something's wrong with it. And so I was like, all right, I'll take it for, I think I paid it was less than $100, it might have been $75. But he had all these marquees. I went back in his office, and he had all of these marquees just lined up on against the floor, leaning up against the wall. I was like, man, how much you want for these marquees? And he's like, I don't know, about $8 a piece. So I took a huge stack of them, and that's where all these marquees came from.
I wish you'd bought them all for that price.
I know. I wish I would have. But that was the first machine, and there was a guy on the Digital Press forums that lived in Virginia Beach, and he drove up, and basically there was nothing wrong with the machine. It just was not connected right, and I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
And he hooked everything up for me, and I had, boom, Golden Tee golf.
Which Golden Tee was it? Do you remember?
97.
So a newer one then, not like Golden Tee 1 or 2. This is one of the nicer ones.
I don't know when the Golden Tee series started, to be honest with you.
If you've ever played Golden Tee 1 or 2, they're very ancient.
Are they? Okay.
Yeah, but Golden Tee 2, what a game. I used to play it all the time. In fact, I played it way more than the new ones.
Really?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, Golden Tee was it was a fun game. It was not my first, it wouldn't have been my first choice, but that was what was available. And when I moved out, as the movers were carrying it down the stairs, they dropped it, and the monitor cracked and broke, and I was just like, just put it in the dumpster, and that was the end. Because I was moving to Korea and I didn't care.
Yeah.
The second machine that I got was through you and your brother. So I just moved here back to Hurricane. And you're like, hey, we're at this place. That was back when you guys used to do cool stuff. And you're like, we can get this machine for you. It's $100. And I was like, all right, get it. And it was a Double Dragon 2. And you brought it over and we cleaned it up. And it fired up a little bit, but the screen was real broken. So we opened it up and recapped the monitor. And lo and behold, it worked great. So I took that machine and took the board out of it and got an iPack and put a PC in there and put lighted buttons in it and all this stuff, and turned it into my first main machine. Then I guess it was maybe a year or so later, we're in your old outbuilding, and you're like, I got this old arcade machine. And I was like, do you want to sell it? And he's like, yeah. And so you sold me that old arcade machine, the Mud Mountain main machine.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about that, since it was your machine for many years before it was mine.
Well, when I lived up on the mountain, this was a machine that I drug up the hill, then down the stairs, then back into and then put it in there. It was a machine that one of our mutual friends had that it had been a Street Fighter clone that they just gave up on it. I was like, well, I'm too stupid to give up, and so I took it in and got it working and put my stuff in it. And it was, I had, not to get too far into it, but I'd had a decent little arcade in Lexington before I moved back. And unlike your trip to Korea where you didn't care, and you thought I cared plenty, and I was flat broke, and I had to sell off my whole collection. It was brutal. It was a downtime in the Aaron history. So I was really wanting to get it back something to play with, just to actually have something to play. And so that was the cabinet. And I had a friend of mine come up and paint the side of it, wackily. And it was just a beat-down cabinet that I had. But, I mean, the bones were good, clearly. And you did a good job cleaning it up.
Yeah, and so that machine became the Neo Geo machine that you see behind you, fair viewer.
Yeah, it looks very nice. You did a real good job.
I actually, that was one of the biggest projects I've ever undertaken, was just the painting, because it was, you have to match the color. I wanted to get it exactly in the multiple coats and everything. But I was happy with the way that everything but the control panel turned out. I wish that I would have bought an overlay instead of just having the black metal, but
hey,
so
there's always time.
Yeah. And finally, the fourth arcade machine that I bought was I bought it at an auction, a legit arcade machine auction. I get these flyers all the time, I guess because I've been there and I've registered, but they're in Tennessee. They always have these, they're called Amusement Auction Company or something like that. And basically they're a huge marketplace for people to buy and sell machines on commission at auction. And I went there with Eat. We rented a trailer. It's like a 7-hour drive. It's not a short drive at all. And went down there, and they'd gone through a bunch of cheap machines, and I was like, well, I'm going to hold out for something special. And I saw this Mario Brothers, and boy, I was like, man, that's a sharp-looking Mario Brothers. I think I'm going to bid on it. And so I bid on it. After, I think I paid almost as much in commissions and fees as I did the machine itself. But put it back in put it in the trailer and brought it home. And I'm really glad I have it, because I love Mario Brothers. It is by far my favorite Nintendo arcade game. And it's a looker. It looks good. The bezel art is all there and everything. The side art, I could probably stand to replace it, but it looks fine.
Yeah, it's a good game, and it's one of my favorites too. I think it's very underrated in the Nintendo pantheon of arcade games. Now, do I like it more than Popeye and Donkey Kong? Probably more than Popeye. Donkey Kong's awful good.
Well, that's your all-time favorite,
but
right?
One thing you can do on this is you can't do on those is have two people playing at once. Plus, it's got the added benefit of having that crazy two-player where you can kind of screw each other if you want to. And it's a great game. So it's a good choice, man. Yeah. And you paid a decent price. It wasn't too bad.
Yeah. So that's my collection of arcade machines. Aaron?
We'd be here all night if I went through my litany of purchases.
Why don't you just hit some highlights and then what you currently have?
The first thing that I ever bought, my brother helped me get a WrestleFest, a WWF WrestleFest, the big 25-inch screen 4-player variety. Man, I love that machine. I loved it. And we played, and it's one game I never got tired of, and still haven't. Just play the crap out of it. My friends all get together when we play it. And it was unfortunately one of the casualties of my move back. And so I never got it back. I really love that one. But anyway, I got the bug. And so me and Brent were getting our toes wet, and we bought a batch of games that I've milled around with. I mean, I've owned a ton of games. Some worked, some didn't, some I could fix, some I didn't, some I just dealt. Right now, I've got a, let's see, what do we have? Donkey Kong with a expander in it, so I can play Donkey Kong 1 or 2. I've got Galaga, which needs some monitor work. Help me out, Bo. What are the video games do I have in there?
You've got Main Event.
I've got the Main Event, which has got my MAME stuff in it. And then we mostly switched over to pinballs when the MAME scene got so big that we could play the majority of the games we wanted. And so we've got a bunch of pinball machines in there as well. And then I've got a spot for console games, too. So the arcade has console stuff in it as well. But, you get the bug for arcade stuff. I mean, if you're listening to Rob O'Hara's podcast, or reading of his books, where he talks about collecting games. I mean, it's a dangerous habit to get into, and it can cause you trouble. I mean, it literally is dangerous in the fact that you got to move these heavy, ancient machines around, and then you've got to take all that space up in your house. Then you've got to fix them. So you've got to be sort of crazy to get into it, but it's a lot of fun. to have at least one. Have you ever had any arcade stuff at the house?
No, but I was going to ask if you all had ever dealt with Derek's down on the west side.
I've got some stuff from Derek's but I never actually went there. Just that they had been passed to there. Speaking of what you're talking about, just to close the topic, you're talking about having your Golden Tee up in your apartment. I bought a machine which ended up being Atari X's and O's. They told me it was a cocktail table, right? So it was on the campus of Ohio State. It was on like the 5th floor at the student dorm, and this guy had this huge machine in there, and we had to carry that sucker and stick it in the elevator, and I mean, it barely made it in. We couldn't even ride with it. We had to send it down and wait for someone at the bottom to open the door and pull it out before the thing closed. So that's what I'm talking about. You do a lot of stupid things when you're younger. You said we were no longer adventurous, and you're right. Absolutely right, and that's the reason why. Any final thoughts on that before we roll on?
Let's jump right into this week's game.
All right, I think I'll lead off the proceedings this week with my choice, which was Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, what a weird choice out of all the video games to choose from. And I chose this one. I don't know how much press this one's ever gotten, but it's one that me and my son have played over and over and over, and I've got a pretty intimate knowledge of it after all the years of playing it, and so I thought, man, this is going to be a good one. Maybe I can turn some people onto it. So this was released. A lot of places say this came out in 92, but the best I could tell, it came out in April of 1993. It's a Capcom production. They produced it. They also developed it. And it was on a weird like system board. If you know anything about Capcoms, they had CPS system board 1, 2, 3, and that was basically like an arcade console. They would release a bunch of games for 1. They'd release a bunch of games for 2. This one was somewhere between 1 and 2. This particular system board that this came out on, there wasn't a lot of games released for it. It's a beat 'em up game in the vein of a Final Fight. 1 to 3 players, and again, this one was a JAMA board. If you're in the arcade scene, it's a horizontal game. It means that the screen is turned like a normal television. So, in this game, you play one of 4 explorers, or basically heroes. They're going to thwart a bad guy who is basically using dinosaurs to create a genetic dinosaur-human hybrid. All right, makes sense, right? I mean, it could happen. The guys you get to play in this, you've got basically 3 guys and a chick. You've got the girl is called Hannah. Have you? And now I'm assuming you went through and played this a little bit. Do you have a favorite character of the bunch?
I like Mustafa.
See, I'm the same way. That's the guy I always play. So here's a rundown of who your choices. And these characters are split into like even powered. Some people are more special or hit harder. Some are quicker. Some have more life. Right. So your first guy is Jack Tenrick. Then you've got Hannah Dundee, the lady of the bunch. She's a tough broad, no doubt. Then you've got Mustafa Cairo. Oh, yeah. That's my boy, too. That's funny that you would pick the same guy. And then lastly, if I can turn this page here, you've got Mass Bradovic. Mass.
Wow.
You know he's a stud if he's named Mass. He's the muscle guy. So what do you do in this game? Well, it's a combination of... I guess there's city fighting, and there's jungle fighting and forest fighting, right? And then some building stuff. So you're one of these characters. It's your classic beat 'em up. You run through the levels, and you try to beat up everyone you see. The amount of moves you can do is pretty impressive. It's got what you would expect from a say, second or third generation Final Fight clone, which is effectively what it is. You can do a dash attack where you hit your joystick twice and run and do an attack. You can do punches, you can do kicks, you can do grabs, slams, defensive tactics. I mean, you've got a lot of options, and they're pretty satisfying. I mean, I think it feels like it's a pretty. I don't get bored with the options, I guess is what I'm saying. Then you've got a special attack where you will do certain maneuvers, spinning kicks or whatnot. That's supposed to basically, really, it's a defensive maneuver to get people off of it, because you will get swarmed in this game by the variety of bad guys in it. There are only 2 buttons in this, attack and jump, and then if you hit both buttons, you do your special attack. So it's pretty standard fare. If you're familiar with the Capcom beat 'em up system, you've got your life bar in the upper left-hand corner or the upper right-hand corner or the center, depending on who you're playing. And then underneath it, you'll see a life bar for your enemy, and you'll, as you beat the crap out of them, the life bar will go down. Sometimes it's yellow, which means they're almost dead. Sometimes it's multicolors, and you have to take that life bar down over and over and over to kill them. The game starts off basically with your character being jumped on this rooftop by these bad guys. They're like, listen, we're going to finish you off. You know, you've gotten into our plans for the last time. And they basically gang attack, and of course your guy or girl beats the crap out of them, goes down to the building, and that's pretty much where the adventure starts. The game is unique in several ways. The dinosaur aspect of it really adds a lot, and I'll get into the whole Cadillacs and Dinosaurs universe, and yes, there is one later on, but basically most of these games you're just fighting guys, you know, fat guys, thin guys, guys with weapons, blah, blah, blah. In this game, you're fighting guys, and you're also occasionally will have to tangle with dinosaurs. And the funny thing about it is this game doesn't treat the dinosaurs like bad guys. They're sort of like subjugated, or they're almost like, they're not pets. They're just like slaves, basically. These poor things are beaten down. The bad guys in this treat the dinosaurs like crap. There's one scene, I believe it's the second boss, and he's called the Butcher. And when you come upon him, he's got these 2 huge cleavers. He's just hacking this dinosaur up, but he doesn't give a crap. He cusses you out, you know. And then one time, one of the bosses, the dinosaur, they just sick him on you because they beat the crap out of stuff. They beat him to get him mad. Then they sick him on you like a guard dog. It's very weird. It's a weird, you know, I'm guessing you picked up on it. Had you played this game before today?
No.
Had you heard of it?
No, I'd never. Actually, I had heard of it, but I never played it. I didn't even know that it was a beat 'em up before this past week.
Right.
I did think that it was a lot cooler than I thought it would be because of that. I figured you'd just be beating up on dinosaurs the whole game, and,
right?
You know, but the way that they frame it, where the dinosaurs, you're trying to actually save the dinosaurs. You know, they're being subjected to all these genetic experiments and things like that. So the dinosaurs are not the bad guys at all. It's
very strange, but it's neat. It's refreshing in a lot of ways. This game, if you've played Capcom's Aliens versus Predators, beat 'em up, I don't know if either one of you guys have played that one. This game has a lot in common with that in some ways. Graphically, it's a beautiful game. They really do an excellent job rendering these characters. Beautiful, colorful game. I think the fights in the jungle really add some flavor to it. There's some like jungle villages. There's a village you go into that's like catches on fire. That's really neat. At the end, there's these crazy labs you're going through that are really bizarre. They've done a good job making them look real. Like what happens if a crazy genius is experimenting with DNA? You get mutants and weird crap in tubes and stuff. That's really bizarre. There are several sections, too few, in my opinion, where you're actually walking through water and even fighting in water. And they're really well done. They're really cool looking. They even have, if someone drops an item, you can even see it under the water. There's sort of this shadow in the water that you could pick it up, which I thought was really neat. The bad guy in this is called Vice. He's a big, crazy, killer bad guy. That's like a doctor guy at the end. I don't want to give away the ending of this because, I mean, it really is worth going through. Did you get to go through the whole thing?
Yeah, I played through the whole thing.
The ending of it is neat, but the gimmick with the guy experimenting on these dinosaurs and humans to make hybrid creatures, it climaxes in a very interesting way. But before you get to the end of it, you'll end up fighting some of these guys that have these kind of hybrid DNA precursors to what ends up happening at the end, and it mutates in this real weird way. Not you, but the guys you're fighting, and you have to sort of fight the same bunch of guys over and over. It works. It works pretty well. There are some scenes in between the fights where you're in your Cadillac, and you're basically mowing suckers down. There's a level where you're going back to your lab and you're mowing down bad guys in your Cadillac, and there are guys behind you on like motorbikes. They're shooting like missiles at you, and so it's slowly wearing down your Cadillac. If you go long enough, you can get there, but usually you end up having your Cadillac blows up and you have to fight your way the rest of the way. They remind me of the scenes in Alien vs. Predator where you're on top of the truck and you're shooting your guns off of them if you've played that. It moves lightning quick. I mean, the board really was a performer in the graphics department. I mean, the action is hot and heavy in this, and they get a ton of stuff on the screen without any. I mean, I didn't notice any sort of slowdown or weirdness, in the proceedings. So you could pick up a ton of crazy stuff in this. One of the weird things about this game, and again, a throwback to Alien vs. Predator, and way more in this than say Final Fight. Again, this is not as old. But they had refined their technique, and they had a bunch of crazy stuff you could pick up. I wrote down some of the nutty stuff, and this stuff's just health recovery stuff. They had and the fact that you find this stuff in the jungle or in water, I found amusing. But you could get coffee, croissants, cakes, sundaes, potatoes.
There's a lot of it's a lot of junk food.
It is, and the thing is, these people were all buff killers, so surely they would never eat this stuff. Hot dogs, pizza, lobster. Sure, why not? Lobster in there. Now, one of the things that adds a little spice to it is the weapons you can pick up.
Now, let me talk a little bit about
Okay,
this.
go ahead.
Okay. This game does guns better than any other beat 'em up I've ever played. The first time I picked up a gun and I was like, man, this feels great. I love the fact that you keep it around and you can pick up ammo for it. But it's hard to even explain why I like it so much. It's very well animated. There's sort of a recoil when you fire. I just love the way this game does weapons.
The one thing about this game, the weapons in it, a lot of the weapons are like caveman. I mean, you've got a rock you can pick up and you've got a rock, just a stick you can whack a dude with. You've got clubs. You've also got dynamite.
I never messed with any of that stuff.
Yeah.
I always just picked up the guns.
Well, I mean, you pick up what you see. There's grenades. There's knives. Again, the grenades are neat. The dynamite. I love stuff like that where you just whack a dude with that. You've got knives, torches. When you fight the butcher, again, we mentioned him whacking that dinosaur. He carries these two mean-looking, like, I don't know, scimitars
machetes or something.
And he'll whack you with, but when you hit him, he'll drop one or both of them, and you can get him and start whacking him.
That's right.
It's very satisfying to finish this guy off with one of these, because he's a real scumbag. One thing about this as well is the bad guys in this, you really want to kill them because they come across like jerks.
Yeah.
I mean, these are real scumbags.
They give you a lot of incentive to want to hate these guys.
Yeah. But the weapons, I mean, there are tons of different guns. There are shotguns, there are Uzis, there's bazookas. Anytime you get killed and you have another man, he'll come down out of the sky and bazooka shots come down and kind of clear the path. So it kind of gives you a little bit of
And the thing that I like about it, too, is that the enemies are dumb, and they will align themselves directly with you as they come across the field to you. So if you've got a gun, you don't have to worry about shooting behind them or in front of them. You're gonna hit them most of the time.
And also something else I like about this is the guys, they can hurt each other and they can get hurt, and the obstacles can hurt them. I hate games where the guys are indestructible and they just walk through.
What one of my favorite things about this game is the way the guys run in, especially these big bruiser guys. They run in like linebackers with their shoulders down.
Yeah, they'll put their shoulders down. This game has a pretty good amount of actual bad guys in it. It's not the best, but I mean it's more than most in terms of the variety of guys. Especially, one thing I like is they add different guys as you go on, so you don't have to fight the fat guys 1,000 times. Although you do fight those guys, they show up a lot. There's 8 bosses in the game, which is it's a goodly amount of bosses to have to fight. The game is, like I said, it spans a lot of different areas, which is just fun. And you'll go across rivers, and like I said, there's jungles and whatnot. So overall, if you look at the evolution of the Final Fight engine, which I mean, that's what this is effectively, right? This is near the top of the peak. I would put this. I like this more than Alien vs. Predator, but they're very similar. And they're very close. It's really sort of what you have an affinity for. A lot of people compare these to the Konami fighting, beat 'em ups like your Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, your Cowboys of Moo Mesa, X-Men, stuff like that. I think those games are good. They're very good. I think these are on par. I mean, they're really both pretty nice. It really depends on what you like, but I think you could sort of get away with both. So I don't really put one ahead of the other. The sound in this is good. The bad guys will talk to you. They shout stuff. There's really good music going on and stuff. So that, you know, and it changes up when something tense happens. There's also a timer. We should mention that. If you take too long, you basically lose that round. You only get 2 men to start, at least on default, which I don't like that. This game you need, and I will say this thing was built to take quarters.
That's right. That's why it was made.
And at the end of this game, it will take all your money because it is brutal. So, did you know, Boat, that this is actually based on a comic strip?
No.
It was. There was a comic strip published by Dark Horse called Xenozoic Tales. That rolls off the tongue. And it was also later sort of relabeled as Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. It came out in February of '87, and it ran until October of '96. And it was created by a fellow and written by a guy named Mark Schultz. Now, I've never read the comics.
That's surprising.
Yeah, I didn't read all that Dark Horse. Plus, that's about when I was not in the comics, right? Well, that's not true. I knew of it. Let's put it that way. But at the time, it didn't appeal to me that much. I mean, I knew of it. I didn't pick up a lot of stuff. Also, this was a short-lived animated series, which I did not know that, on Fox. This ran for a season. I think it was like 14 episodes. Now, I've not watched them, but I might let the kid watch them because he likes the game an awful lot. It reminds me an awful lot of the Konami Cowboys of Moo Mesa, if you've ever played that one, in that it was a wacky idea for a fighting game that was based on a short-lived show. I mean, if you think about the properties that both Konami and Capcom bought here, Cowboys of Moo Mesa, have you ever heard of that aside from the game? Did you know that was a cartoon?
Yeah, I remember that cartoon more, probably
really?
Just because of the name.
Yeah, and like would have never guessed. You know, I figured it was based on something, but I didn't know what. You know, and the same with this one. Like, you know, it's sort of obscure. It's funny. I guess they took a chance. Mm-hmm. Like, we're going to see if this pans out, and we'll see what happens. And apparently, they still occasionally will do something with this. There was also a console, like, I don't want to say sequel, but there was a console game that was based on the same property, Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. I've not played it, but I read that it wasn't in the beat 'em up style. It was something else. But you know, overall, as far as these games go, this is one of our favorites. It's certainly one of my kids' favorites. My kid gradually went. We started with Golden Axe, Altered Beast. Then we played Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and we slowly went up the scale of complexity. And this is where we ended up eventually. We got through this one. That was the first time I'd really sat down and played it. I kind of dug it. So overall, your thoughts?
This is one of the best looking, really arcade games, you know, that I've ever played. Everything is very well animated. I thought the backgrounds really came alive. I think that everything moves really smoothly, and there's not a lot of slowdown. There's not a lot of flicker. The engine, like you talked about, I actually prefer this to the Konami engine. I think that this is
really
a better put-together game than, say, The Simpsons or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I realize those games have their fans, but I wonder how much of that is tied to the licenses. I think that this game, it held my attention all the way through. I never felt like I was just, you know, banging my way through another level. It does get, like you said, incredibly hard towards the end of the game, but it's supposed to, because it's supposed to take your quarters. That didn't bother me. I just pushed select and hit start. And
yeah.
So
this is perfect for the home.
Yeah. But the one downside, the one aspect of this game that I didn't think was great was that they really sell the Cadillacs part of the title short. That seemed to be like just one tiny part of the game. Yeah,
you're right. And I will say one other thing that I don't enjoy as a father, as just a schmuck, I don't mind, but as a father playing this with a kid, there's a couple parts of this that are pretty violent. Particularly the butcher part where he's butchering that thing. I know we keep talking about that, but it's very memorable. It happens pretty early in the game. They do some pretty heinous stuff to these dinosaurs, and some of the stuff in the lab's kind of sketchy for a kid. There's one great scene. I hate to not. There's really two really amusing things they do with the dinosaur idea. There's one scene where there's like a T-Rex asleep. And as you walk past him, you see the little sleep Z's coming out. And the bad guys will come up and try to punch him because they want to wake him up. And if you crash them and destroy them before they get to it, you can tiptoe past this thing without waking them up, which I thought that was funny. And then another thing I like, there's a scene where you walk under this, well, I guess it's like a brontosaurus or something. All you see are his feet. And there's a shadow from where his foot, he's trying to stomp on you. And he also stomp on the bad guys, and you've got to sort of maneuver out of the way of these feet as they come stomping down. I thought that was pretty clever too.
Yeah.
So it's not just going around and beating stuff up. They're actually using some pretty clever gimmicks in it.
I loved it.
Great. I'm glad to hear that. Have you played this one before, John?
No, but it's really neat.
Have you ever heard the comic?
I'm watching it here. No.
Well, I would give it a shot. I think it's a fun one. So that's Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. If you're into beat 'em ups, throw some coinage on this thing and give it a whirl. By the way, FYI, I never saw this in the arcade. So I'm guessing you didn't either.
This is I went through and found a picture of the cab for the purposes of this show.
Yeah.
The cab is one of the ugliest things I've ever seen in my life. It's painted like sort of a sky blue. There's no side art, and this is the official cab. I mean, there's multiple pictures of this thing.
Yeah.
With the marquee on top, but there's no control panel overlay. You could tell that we were reaching the end of the arcades, and they were just kind of, putting these things out the door to try and get money.
Well, I will say this: the cabinets were less elaborate. I mean, if you think about stuff like the Tron cabinets, or
even Space Invaders or something like that.
I mean, Space Invaders or even stuff like Asteroids. I mean, where they tried their best to put like mirrors and they did everything they could.
They made cabinets were a work of art in the early '80s, and by the time we get to the early '90s, they just were a commodity.
I can't deny that.
Yeah.
I can't deny that. So, Bo, what do you got for us this week?
All right, this week we're actually going to talk about 4 different games.
Buckle up.
So the game, the sort of the center of this is Do Run Run. But before we get to Do Run Run, I'd like to take you through the entire Mr. Do franchise. And so we'll start with the original Mr. Do. Mr. Do was released in 1982 by Universal. And Universal was a Japanese development house that released over, how many games would you estimate Universal released?
12?
See, I thought the same thing. They released over 50 games.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, no, I would never have guessed that.
Now,
many.
they released these games in sort of the dark period of arcade games in the late 70s when there were still a lot of black and white games that nobody collects and nobody really knows anything about. And so, but they released over 50 titles, the most famous in the U.S. being Space Panic, Ladybug, and the Mr. Do series. They also released a Laserdisc game. Did you know that?
Oh, yeah, I did. What was it? That seems like I did know that.
Super Don Quixote.
Yeah, I've played Super Don Quixote on Daphne. It's interesting.
Okay, I have not played it. I have not played it, but I thought that was interesting. So they went out of business in '85. The reason is not really given, but their assets were bought by a company called Electrocoin, and they continued to make updated versions of their arcade games. So you can play a Mr. Do that's got the Electrocoin on it that might have bug fixes or graphical changes, things like that.
And they went on in '85, huh?
85.
So they were short-lived, really, in the arcade scene.
From what I can tell, their downfall came from Laserdisc titles. It seems like they invested a whole bunch of money into what they call the Universal Laserdisc system, where they were going to start pumping out one title a month or something like that. And when the Laserdisc fad sort of petered out, they were left holding the bag.
That's a bummer.
Yeah.
What a way to go, after all those good arcade games.
So the original Mr. Do game, in all of Mr. Do games, Mr. Do, who is he? He's a clown. He's a clown, and what you do is you burrow through a sort of a garden environment. You collect cherries while avoiding enemies. It's played on a single screen, top-down, Pac-Man style view. This game is very similar to Dig Dug. If you combine sort of Dig Dug with Pac-Man, you get kind of what Mr. Do is all about. However, Mr. Do has a unique offensive weapon. He has the ball, the magical ball, and when you throw the ball, it travels through all of the paths that you've created or that your enemies have created in the level. And so you can actually, and it won't stop until it either comes back to you or hits an enemy. So it can go around and around and around, which can be a good thing or a bad thing. The ball, if you hit an enemy, you have to wait for a little bit, and then the ball will just magically reappear in Mr. Do's hands.
It's magic.
Yeah. And there's also apples on the playfield. So this is sort of a what's the game with the rocks? Boulder Dash. It's got a Boulder Dash element to it where if you go underneath a rock or if you go underneath an apple, the apple will fall down behind you, and you can also use that to either create a block to the path so your enemies can't get through it as easily, or you can crush your enemies using the apples. A hallmark of the Mr. Do series in most of the Universal games is the ability to get an extra life by spelling the word extra. In Mr. Do, the extra letters take the form of moving enemies that appear when you eat the cake that's in the middle of each level. So just like in Ladybug, which we talked about a couple weeks ago, once all the monsters sort of vacate the center area, you're left behind with this piece of cake.
You get a goodie.
Yeah. And so if you eat that cake, then the action stops on the playfield, and a letter that's a personification of a monster letter walks out with his guardians. There's 3 or 4 guys that come out before him, and if you destroy the letter monster, then you've gotten that letter to spell out extra.
And his buddies all turn to apples.
That's right. That's right. Now you can destroy the baddies one by one, but that doesn't get you anything. But if you destroy the letter baddie, then all the other guys, just like Aaron said, turn to apples, and hopefully they crush a whole bunch of monsters, and a good time's had by all. So how do you complete a stage in Mr. Do? All you have to do is collect all the cherries or defeat all the monsters, and it's the level's over.
Or there's one more way.
What's the other way? Oh, where you're going to talk about the diamond? I'm going to talk about the diamond later on. So that is Mr. Do. Aaron, what are your thoughts about the Mr. Do game?
The original Mr. Do is one of my favorite arcade games. And if you told me back when it came out that it'd be I'd be like, nah. I was like you said, oh, this is a Dig Dug ripoff or whatever. And on the surface, it looks like a Dig Dug ripoff, but really, it's not anything like Dig Dug, except that you smash stuff and dig through dirt. It is so... it's so abstract in a weird way. It is way more than the sum. It's the sum of its parts plus. I mean, is there a little Pac-Man in there? Yes. Is there a little Dig Dug in there? Yes. Is there a little Boulder Dash in there? Yes. But I mean, it is really its own. It borrows all the best things from games and makes them into something that's great. Mm-hmm. I fell in love with this title when I had the MAME cabinet. I mean, we would have high score battles, and at one point I was a pretty decent hand. But I noticed a lot of these old games, you really lose it quick when you don't play them for a while. And I went back and played this one, which I still play it on and off. But, boy, if you don't play it a lot, I'll lose it. And I didn't have as good a games as I used to. But, man, it's a lot of fun. It can be frustrating. If you're a newcomer, you can easily give up. I mean, this is not an easy game. The magic ball is a lot like in the Cadillacs and Dinosaurs using your ultra weapon. You really want to use it defensively because it's such a crappy weapon. Mm-hmm. It just goes randomly off somewhere. So unless you have a straight shot, you don't want to just throw that thing and launch it because you'd be boned.
Right.
But I love it. I love this game. I love the quirkiness of it. I like the crazy intermission screens. I like the art. I like the color scheme. I just like everything about it. It's just a beautiful, perfect game. Just one of my all-time favorites.
Awesome.
I got nothing bad to say about it.
I discovered this game on a disc full of copied software on the Atari computer. You know how when you get a copy disc, sometimes you would see they would make sort of a custom loading screen where it said press 1 to play this game, press 2 to play this game. Well, I was just randomly going through discs, and I discovered that if you go in through DOS, sometimes there were games that were on there that weren't on the custom loading screen, and this was one of those games. So I typed in MrDo.exe and hit return, and I was like, wow, this game looks awesome. And the Atari 8-bit version is a pretty faithful port. It's one of the better ports of this game. This game also had a release on the Super Nintendo. Oddly enough, it's a very strange thing how this appeared on the Super Nintendo. It's the only Mr. Do game to appear on the Super Nintendo, and there was a version for the Neo Geo called Neo Mr. Do, which is an affront to God and man, and I won't say anything else about it.
It's not that bad. Now, stop me if I'm wrong here, Boatster, but I believe on the Super Nintendo version you can have 2 players simultaneous play.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, I have not played the Super Nintendo version with 2 players before.
I think you can. I think it's the only version that, I mean, I don't know, Neo Do might do it as well. Neo Do's unusual, like rethinking, reimagining of it.
It's no good. John, have you played Mr. Do at all?
I didn't even know about the series until you guys covered it.
Really?
Oh, okay.
Oh, well, you need to. We just give you a gift, John. You need to look into it.
All right, well, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next game in the Do series. This is Mr. Do's Castle. So, Mr. Do's Castle arrived... actually, I didn't write anything about Mr. Do's Castle because I remember that you were going to talk about it.
Well, I will talk about Mr. Do's Castle. Now, I like to say much...
83. It arrived in 83, a year after
this game... You know, the Mr. Do's Castle is totally different than Mr. Do in almost every way, but it gets away with murder because it retains what made Mr. Do fun. You've got the crazy little clown, and you basically in this one you go around and you try to whack these blocks out of various platforms, all right? And some of the blocks are cherries, and some of them are keys. And when you whack all the keys, a door at the top of the screen opens up. You can get, basically, it's like a power pill, effectively. And it turns every monster that's up on the screen into a letter. And you can go as quick as you can, try to bonk as many as you can or drop stuff on them. But in this one, effectively, to end the level, you have to destroy all the monsters or get all the cherries, which you never do. Because this game's a lot harder to get around. This game has even a steeper learning curve than Mr. Do. It is a very difficult game, and for the uninitiated, it's almost impossible, which it baffles me that this got released. I mean, in all honesty, this, as far as these sorts of games go, this is near the top of the heap. Really, all the Mr. Do games are like this in a lot of ways. It's an abstract game. One of the methods to get around in this, there are these little staircases, and if you bump them once you get to the top, they will basically tilt to the another platform beside you, and it's a good way to get bad guys off your butt. There are also platforms that have these blocks in it that have skulls on them, and if you hit one skull, hit all the cherries between the one skull and the other skull, and get monsters caught in it. When you hit the other skull, all the monsters will fall down the next level and die. And this is a very basic explanation of the game because there are nuances and stuff, much like Mr. Do, that where for point getting, if you knock a monster down through more than one block, you get extra points. You can knock it down through 2, 3 blocks. If you get a bunch of monsters at once, you get points. So there are a lot of aspects to it that are tough to explain and even tougher to master. But it's a great game. Another game we found, me and my buddy Chad went through a phase where we were just trying new games. And we had never wanted to play this because it was so hard. So we were trying to one-up each other on this hard game. And and we became addicted to it. And I still play it to this day. It's a great game, but very challenging. What do you think about it, Bo?
This one is the odd one out for me. I don't count Mr. Do's Castle or not Mr. Do's Wild Ride because that one is so much different. But I do consider this to be part of the Mr. Do canon, but it is not the same game at all as Mr. Do or Do Run Run. This game reminds me a lot of Burger Time because you're constantly climbing ladders, moving to different platforms, and trying to knock enemies down. It's also hard like Burger Time. This game is not one that you can... Mr. Do, it's immediately apparent what you need to do. You need to collect the cherries. In this game, you really don't know what to do at the beginning. You got this hammer and you can hit things, but there's no clear goal. And you're thinking, well, there's a couple keys. Maybe if I go up and knock off, destroy all the keys, I can go through that door and go to the next level. Nope, that's not how it works.
I watched you play this on the stream, and I cackled with delight as you were trying to escape because there is no escape from Mr. Do's Castle except through obliteration of the enemy.
Now, that said, I can understand how this game can be a very rewarding experience to those who take the time to really learn it.
Yes, which I guess most difficult arcade games are like that. But I mean, if you want a real, and another one, much like the original Do, this is a very abstract game, and how you play it is going to vary between the various people that play the game. It's not like a lock and chase. It could be like that, or a ladybug. It could be a lot like those if you want it to be. It depends on how you want to play it. If you just want to go through and get all the cherries, that's an angle you can play. If you want to go through and kill the monsters as quick as you can, that's another angle. In this one, if you could spell out extra by hitting that power pill that's in the doors and then whacking guys when they turn the letters. Some people go that route. I'll try to keep a lot of the monsters alive and have them group at the top. And so when I hit that, I can go whack them real quick. Is that the best strategy? I don't know. But I mean, there's a lot of there's a lot of different ways to play it. And the clown looks good. The monsters are cute. This is sort of like the monsters in this are the cutest the bunch, I think, of all the Do games. This sort of reminds me almost of like a Liquid Kids or a Bubble Bobble. They're cute monster games, you know, as opposed to they look a lot meaner in the first game than they do in this one. The big chompy guys in the first one are scary. So,
and it's worth noting that this game in other regions was actually called Mr. Do versus Unicorns.
Which I don't, yeah, but there are unicorns in this. Yeah,
I mean the monsters all have that horn.
Yeah,
That's what they are.
I like Mr. Do's Castle though, that is the name personally, but I do. I can see it's not for everyone. It's
Right.
not, but I mean, I enjoyed it.
You know, I originally was going to set up my marquees here in the front of the table.
Yeah.
And but I didn't. So,
So that's a separate video. You
Yeah.
can just have all the marquees out.
well, I was going to put because I've got the Castle and Wild Ride right there, but you can if you look beside Aaron on the video, you can see them hanging out there over by the fireplace. All right, moving on. So we turn now to 1984, a very good year. And it's time for Mr. Do's next adventure, Mr. Do's Wild Ride. Now, this is a very bizarre title because in a Super Mario Brothers 2-like turn, Mr. Do's Wild Ride was not originally a Mr. Do game.
Really?
Yeah, it was
Okay.
a game. It was a game called Go Go Coaster. It had nothing to do with Mr. Do. It was a different guy
That
in it.
explains a lot, Boat.
Yeah, but they decided, hey, we need a game. We need a new Do game, and so they put Mr. Do in it. This game is much different than the first two, in that you start at the bottom of each screen. You don't have to collect any cherries if you don't want to. You're basically just trying to make it to the top of a roller coaster. In your way, there are cars that are in your way. There's a roller coaster that's actually in operation that you must avoid.
Yeah.
There are balls. There's spheres that sort of go back and forth in an odd way.
What are they? Why are they on the coaster, Boat?
Yeah, I have no idea. In later levels, there's a pirate ship that floats in midair that impedes your progress. So this is a very, very strange game. The way that you spell extra, because there really aren't any enemies to defeat in this game, is that it's just all a time bonus thing. So if you get there really soon, you're going to be spelling E. If not, X, and go on down the line. So this game is really, really strange. It's a pretty game. I like the way it looks, but this is definitely the weak link in the Mr. Do chain for me. I have never completed the second level, and I've only completed the first level a couple times. It's very infuriating because it's a waiting game. This is a big reason why I don't like Donkey Kong, because it's very similar, except instead of barrels coming down that you've got to wait, you got to climb up a ladder and wait for them to go under you. Now you're waiting for the roller coaster. The thing that makes this even worse than Donkey Kong is that you don't have a jump, so you've got to locate a ladder and go up the ladder and wait around. You can depress the button and gain a speed boost, and that is a small help. But overall, this is not my favorite Mr. Do game. In fact, this is my least favorite. What do you think about this one, Aaron?
Until you told me what we were doing here this week, I had given this a passing glance at best, because I never knew exactly what in the hell was going on. It is a chaotic, crazy game. That said, I did spend some time this week trying to get to know this game. When you tell me it's not a Mr. Do game, it makes sense, because in Mr. Do games there's a way to be offensive. In this game, you're pretty much just avoiding everything. The speed boost doesn't do much. It took me forever just to figure out what to do. I didn't want to read anything. I was like, I'm going to figure this out. And you're right, getting to the top of the coaster, but the coaster is in this weird twist. And so I didn't know. I was like, how do you get up the hill?
It's sort of
here?
like an MC Escher.
It is very Escher-like. And so when I got to the top, I literally stood up and cheered. I was so happy to get there. And then I ended up playing, I got a couple levels in.
So you actually beat one of the levels that had the pirate ship on it.
Yes.
Wow.
One time. And it's really a hard game, too. And the fact that you can't jump and you have no ball, you can't jump, you've got no hand.
We're watching the playthrough right now. We're on a stage now that I have never seen.
Yeah.
I guess this is scene 5. This is crazy. You got these horses. So I guess you're going through a circus. It's kind of got a little Circus Charlie vibe to it. But yeah, I cannot imagine being able to play this thing without hours and hours of practice.
Yeah, I will say, telling me that there's not a do connection, this is the most undo-like of all the games. And by the way, they're unlike the other games where I bet they strapped the extra onto this one, number one. And number two, in the other games, there are various methods of playing. That's what is the hallmark of the series. This one, unless it's above me, all you're doing is avoiding.
That's right.
It's like, I mean, I don't know if it would insult Donkey Kong by comparing the two, but I can see where you're coming from.
Well, you know, it's funny that you mentioned that because this game was cloned for the Commodore 64 and the ZX Spectrum as Kong Strikes Back.
Well, some of the levels, as I'm looking at them, because I mean, I never got any of these places. If you've gotten to the what is it, the fourth level of Donkey Kong Jr., where you're avoiding this stuff these sparks that are coming down and these platforms, it's sort of, I can sort of see a similarity there. But man, this game is, I don't know how this did in the arcade, but I'm guessing it was an El Flapo Grande.
Yeah, and these games are notable because I think aside from the original Mr. Do, all of the sequels were only available as conversion kits. And that was sort of a new thing at this time. You know, there weren't a whole lot of sequels coming out, you know, and it was a money-saving measure. All of these games predate JAMA, so there are lots of Mr. Do to JAMA adapters available on eBay. But
conversion kits were quite popular before they adopted a standard, because you could use those same cabinets over and over, and the games people would get bored of and put a new one in cheap.
Right, right. And now we move to the final game in the Do series. This is Do Run Run. Do Run Run was Mr. Do's second game of 1984. There's not too many arcade titles where you have two come out in one year.
Maybe when they licensed the first one, they're like, well, let's go ahead and write another one.
Right.
You have it standing by.
Right. And I'd say that this is the truest sequel to the original. This one shares the most aspects of the original Mr. Do of any of the four. So in this game, Mr. Do, you're running around various, I call them pseudo 3D environments, and that there are raised levels and lower levels.
Right.
And you're collecting dots. You're avoiding or destroying bad guys. This, you know, when you think about it, just from that standpoint, it seems like a Pac-Man clone. You run around, you eat dots, you avoid the bad guys. But there are several aspects of this that make it different. One, the maze, there's no maze. It's entirely an open field. You can go anywhere on the screen. Two, this game incorporates aspects of kicks, where, you know, in kicks you're trying to make squares that are worth points. Well, in this, as you travel and you collect these dots, you leave behind a white line, sort of like if you've ever lined a football field. You got this thing and you're leaving behind a white line. And so if you completely encircle some dots with that white square, then they will change point value and also change form. They'll turn into various types of fruit. So that's cool. That's a way that you can jack up your score. You've still got the ball. The way the ball works in this game is it travels in a straight line from wherever you shoot it, and it will bounce when it reaches the end of the screen. It will bounce back like a wrestler running the ropes. It'll keep going back and forth, and the more times that it bounces back and forth on the screen before it hits an enemy, the more points it's worth when it finally does.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, so that is one of the best ways to run up a really high score. That's another thing that's different. I think in the original Mr. Do, there was a set time when your ball reappeared. In this game, your ball will slowly start to emerge from the amount of dots or fruit that you collect, and you can actually see it slowly forming in your hands as you collect more and more dots or fruit. The way that you complete a level is you can either collect all of the dots or fruit in the level, and that will end the level, or you can destroy all of the enemies. There's one other aspect of this game where instead of apples as in the first game, in this game you actually have rolling logs that are set up, and they've got a little stopper. Once you run underneath the log, the log will roll down and destroy any enemies or yourself if you manage to find yourself trapped under there. Spelling extra is very similar to the first game, but you have more control over what letter you want. Every once in a while, and this is dependent on the type of fruit, how many squares you make around things, you'll get a flashing cursor on the field that will spell either EXTR or A. If you run over that, that triggers the monster coming down from the top, very similar to the first game, and you can destroy it to collect the letter. Just like the first game, but this game actually, I prefer it. You get a little cutscene where all the extra letters run into a house, and then your extra Mr. Do runs out of the other side of the house. I think it's really cool. So that is really the game in a nutshell. However, one aspect that I didn't mention in the first game that's also made an appearance in this game is that once in a very, very, very long time, depending on your dip switch settings, you will get a diamond. A diamond will appear on the playfield, and if you collect this diamond, it's worth 10,000 points, and you are immediately transported to the next level. This has probably happened to me maybe 4 or 5 times in the countless games I've played of these games.
I've never had it happen to me in this. I've had it happen in Mr. Do many times. In fact, when I set the high score on our machine back in the day, it was because I'd gotten the diamond. Chad was furious at that. I laughed. You're right. This game has a lot more in common with the first game than any of the other games do. That said, also like the first game, this is a real abstract. You can go and just kill stuff. You could try to farm that fruit with the line, the kicks line you've got coming out. This game has elements of kicks. It has elements of Mr. Do, and it sort of reminds me an awful lot of Crystal Castles, where the elements of collecting all the dots, like in Crystal Castles, in a 3D environment. Except this is controllable, unlike Crystal Castles, which I can never control that because of the trackball. This game is not my favorite. Mr. Do, and I prefer Mr. Do and Mr. Do's Castle more, but this is much like the first one, and it's still a good game. And the more I play it, the more I enjoy it. It's a tough game as well. I mean, it's you're basically, like you said, you're out in an expanse. There are monsters, and they just are going to come get you. And you got to go, and This is a tough one to try to understand the method of play. Really, if it was just going around and collecting the dots, this game we wouldn't care about it anymore. But the aspect of making the rings around the dots and upgrading basically effectively growing them to something else, it adds a lot to it. The monsters are fun. I love extra. I love everything about that. The music's wacky in it, which I like. It fits it. The ball thing I didn't know about, but that's cool. I didn't know about the point multiplier. That's pretty neat. Fun game. It's really with the exception of Mr. Do's Wild Ride, all the Do games have their pluses and minuses, and I think this one is right up there. And again, it's another game where you have to sit down and tell yourself, I'm going to play this game for an hour or whatever, and just sit there and get killed over and over until you understand the concepts behind how things move. Trying to understand the concept of how to lasso those dots is tricky. Yeah. I mean, that's the hardest thing for me, is to understand how am I going to get these points. If you don't go for points and just try to survive, you've got a better chance, probably. But sometimes, like the lines, whether you want them or not, you got them. And sometimes stuff will appear on them and slink out and hit you real quick. And so you've got to be prepared for that. So tricky. It's a tricky game. To me, this is probably the second hardest of the 4 behind Mr. Do's Wild Ride. I mean, it's a tough game.
Yeah. This is my favorite arcade game of all time, so I obviously love it. There are things about it that the things that I like are that it's got a tremendous amount of variety in how you want to play it. You can make, I've tried to get all pineapples, which is you got to encircle everything like 6 times to finally upgrade it to the highest level. And the key to getting a high score is a combination of being mindful of your squares and always trying to upgrade that while destroying the monsters, because the longer you stay on a level, the faster the monsters get, and they'll eventually catch up to you.
Yes, and the monsters they'll come after you. They're not just out there milling around.
Yeah, they're very aggressive. Yeah. So I looked up a couple of these on eBay. I looked at Mr. Do it's really, really difficult to find a Mr. Do original in an original Universal cab. The Universal cabs are very distinctive. They're very cool looking, and I couldn't find any that had recently come up. I did find a conversion cab that somebody had up for $895, which I think is crazy, and I don't think it's going to sell, but people, you never know with the arcade scene. I did find some PCBs. You can get a Mr. Do's Castle PCB for around $70. You can get Mr. Do's Wild Ride, one sold conversion kit. The whole kit sold for under $150. It was a best offer accepted deal. And then Mr. Do's Wild Ride machine, which was a conversion, that sold for only $200. So
I should mention, since I didn't go into the eBay aspect of mine, there's a reason why. The Capcom board that Cadillacs and Dinosaurs came on had the patented Capcom suicide battery on it. And what that basically means is after that battery runs out, a small portion of the data on the board is erased and the board is useless. Now, this was death until a few years ago where someone figured out a way around it. But the board worth is real hard to judge. And I just saw prices that were so far over the map, and when you're buying these boards, it really helps to be hands-on because you're going to want to see what you're getting. You could get screwed very easily on one of these Capcom boards with a suicide battery issue. So that's one where you really want to do a lot of. It's not for a newcomer getting into arcade collecting, that's for sure.
Right. So it's time for the high score challenge.
All right, I've got to make sure I've got the right score. So tell me your score so I can know exactly what I'm looking at
here.
My
score for Cadillacs and Dinosaurs was 243,400.
Okay, let me beam back here on the Gambletron all the way back. Here it is. My score was 245,600.
Oh, wow, very close.
Yes,
very
and what'd you
close.
say yours was?
243,400.
Oh, that is a tragedy.
Yeah.
Let me guess. You got to the butcher.
I did. I did.
The butcher is a butcher. He's a real scumbag.
Okay, do run score.
All right, what you got?
Now, I limited myself to only playing this a couple times because I didn't want to totally destroy you.
Oh, great.
149,520.
You totally destroyed me. 27,800.
Oh, I've scored over 300,000 on this game.
Yeah, you mashed me on that.
But like I said, it's my favorite game.
Hey, no matter how close or far away the scores were, we both won one. That's the important thing.
That's right. All right, Aaron, it's time for the Retro Roulette.
Should we let our guests spin it this week?
Well, no, because there's a special way I've got to do it.
What does that mean?
I'm just kidding, John.
Ah! Good thing I drank all that.
Hey, it was never concerned that wouldn't be empty.
You would have broken the golden rule.
John, you might want to de-mic. All right. And when you spin this thing, really give it a good spin.
What do we add this week, Boat? By the way?
So we've added. I don't even remember. We've got the BBC Micro on here. We got the Apple II. And again, we have those 3 chat choice spaces. So chat, get ready. There's a Super Nintendo, BBC Micro, Odyssey 2, Vectrex, Amstrad CPC, Apple II, and ZX Spectrum.
Wow.
If it shows up on as the chat choice, you all will do a quick poll in the chat, and you can tell us what you want.
It's crazy. There's some crazy choices on there.
All right.
Spin the wheel. Make the deal. There it is. I can't see it, so you have to tell me what we got.
And it is chat choice.
Uh-oh.
Chat choice.
It's the first time chat choices came up. So you, the chat room, will get to pick a system from amongst the ones on the wheel. I will grab the envelopes of certain doom.
All right.
TI-99. Who said that?
Sorry, Jason.
We don't have TI on there. Okay, I've got all the envelopes here. You tell me which one you pick.
All right, I'm just waiting for the final results to roll in here.
I don't see a consensus yet.
There is a consensus. We have 3 votes for the ZX Spectrum and only 1 for all the other. Oh, wait a minute. It's going to be close. All right, 5 more seconds. All right, the winner is, thanks to Paul, Dan Ross, and Pixels at Dawn. They all voted for the ZX Spectrum.
All right, I've got the. I anticipated this. I've got the envelope for the ZX Spectrum right here in my hand, and we're gonna see what we got. And I honestly don't remember what I picked on here. Do you? All right. So, Boat, here's yours.
All right.
All right, and I think your turn to pick first this week.
All right, we will be playing School Days.
Okay, and I'm going to pick, let's see here. I'm just going to go in the order that I wrote these down, and I have no idea, by the way, on what this game is, so don't mock me. I'm picking Death Chase.
All right, Death Chase and School Days it is.
Death Chase. That's my kind of game. You ever played Death Chase, dude? All right.
All right, guys. Well, thank you, as always, for listening. ARG Presents is released every Wednesday, and we do record live on YouTube, so make sure and check us out live if you can. I want to thank Pixels at Dawn, UK Retro Gamer, Duncan Styles, Jonas Rulo, Steve Rasmussen, Dan Ross, Paul Harrington, Pixels at Dawn, Duncan Styles, anybody else, Eric Sundstrom that I missed. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Aaron, you want to take us home?
We should, while we're here, mention that if you'd like to support us on Patreon, we'd be more than happy to accept your Patreon donation. Bo, what's our Patreon address?
Patreon.com/Amigos Podcast.
And we've got various levels in there, including one that gets you on our Discord chat, which is outstanding. We enjoy that every week, don't we, Bo?
We sure do.
I guess that's all we've got. Anything to add, John? Thanks for coming in and setting in. And I guess until next week, adios.
All right, we're out.
Okay, yes. I'll tell you something. Excuse me, fellas. You could. I don't know how long do we go?
That was a long one.
You could cut out some of that arcade stuff and use that as the.
Yeah, that's what I'll do.
Because that went on.
Yeah.
And I could have kept going forever on that.
Sorry about the choking fit.
Did you choke?
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, well, I turned you down, and so yeah.
My right eye was watering.
Dang, what happened?
Where I was trying not to cough. I guess my sinuses.
Oh man.
Yeah, I just turned you down because I could tell you were in pain.
Sorry about that.
Hey,
Oh,
listen,
it's no problem.
We've got disc 2 in the
Oh, don't worry, Eric. We're gonna move right on to Amigos, coming up in just a few short minutes.
You really like Cadillacs, huh?
Yeah, I loved it. I'm gonna use the facilities upstairs. Chat, don't go anywhere. John, can I get you anything?
No,
Water?
There you go.
All right.
Actually, I have some out in the car.
Okay.
I'm by myself over here now.
Oh man.
I brought some more cookies.
Oh, kick ass. Oh
I
man,
told
those are
Bodo,
so good.
I told Bodo it wasn't fair to bring you some and not bring him
Oh
some.
man, no, it's not for your boat because I'm going to eat those too.
I've got a half-gallon of milk upstairs with it too.
Your machine. You notice I brought the.
Yeah.
After the show, we're going to plug this in over here, and then I'm going to shoot some video to post up on just the demonstration of it because it's funny. Lefarius, the guy, you ever listen to Amigorama?
I've heard you all talk about it.
He just posted, he goes, yeah, because I just got this cheap SCART to HDMI converter, and I've got an HDMI connector cut out of the Amiga now with the SCART. And I was like, we're going to do something on that tonight. So it was perfect timing.
Show both that cable.
Yeah. Just,
Man,
what's wrong?
this is a postcard. I've got to write his address on it.
I'm sorry, you didn't say that. I just thought I was filling something out. You can still get it on there. It'll be all right.
You ruined my life, man. I hate
Look, you overreact like no man I've ever seen. It's just a postcard. No one cares. Put the address on and fill it out. Did I? Did I do something stupid? Don't answer that. Hey, how comfortable are you with this game? Like, do you want to take the lead on this one?
No.
So, we're going to go from games we know intimately to this right here.
Yep.
Hey, chat choice. I'm glad that came up
finally.
Well, I guess we're going to be emulating next week. Once I get the ZX Spectrum working. Okay.
I think you'll like my game. It's a unique title.
I have no opinion about my game. No clue what it is. I saw the name. I'm like, Death Chase. That sounds good. Hey, listen. We were going to hit one of these European gimmicks eventually.
How's it going, chat? Thank you, UK Retro Gamer. Those kind words. I knew you're... You know, it's funny.
Did you have a stroke? What happened there?
It's funny, you know, I'm reading this Norse mythology, and I think that might be one of the characters. It's like...
Norse
there's about 16 Y's and a bunch of consonants and no vowels.
Yeah. Alphabet soup. Oh, I need the...
I think both of you might have a dry basement because this is the second time we've gotten choked through here.
It might, well, yeah, I mean, I run a dehumidifier down here.
It could be our humor.
Handle over there too.
Yeah. Did you get your water? You good?
No, I'm fine. I've got yeah, I keep getting shocked over here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's definitely, but the alternative is to have mold and mildew, so.
Give me 1 second here, Bo, to get my house in order real quick, and I'll be ready.
Okay, so we got mailbag first. And then
Hey, you know the new Andre the Giant documentary comes out Tuesday, and I hear it is awesome. I hear it's great for wrestling and non-wrestling fans.
is it
HBO.
HBO?
Yeah. So, I bet it's good. I bet it ends up being really good. Let me get my news up here, and we'll be ready to roll. I haven't even looked at the news much this week because I've been doing a bunch of crazy Atari research. Let's see here.
Oh yeah, I need to actually. Okay, stream people, stand by. We might lose you for a second. All right, we did not lose you.
Good job, dude.
Pull this
So we
up.
can pitch that.
Oh, shoot.
Did you watch this thing from Duncan, guiding you through the setup of an Amiga compact flash drive? Man, I wish I'd had him earlier. I needed that bad. That could be a real pain.
I saw the setup that you have to do initially for that Retro Pi.
It's not that tough, actually.
The way the guy was doing it, he was flipping back and forth between the Pi and the PC.
Well, don't pay attention to that guy. That guy doesn't know what he's doing. This is what you do. You get the SD card from Aaron, you put the SD card in your Pi, and you plug the thing in.
Plug your
This
joystick
was
in.
a first time install. Like
No, there's
There's
no initiation. There's no
Yeah.
drivers. You just literally plug in a card you get from me, and then you play games.
You download it. Like I can see if you didn't download an image from somewhere online and you were trying to do it all yourself, but why would you do that?
I was just looking at the tech aspects of it.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Let's see, what do we post this week, Boaster? A couple various gimmicks. I'm going to get my Facebook up just to be on the back end here. We'll be ready to go. We're running a little bit late this week, aren't we? I already told Teresa, I was like, listen, we're going to be running late. I was like, this just warning you.
Glad you didn't have to come from town. Whew.
Oh, man. Listen, I don't miss that like you wouldn't believe.
Well, like I said, they were doing pothole fills right before the bridge, and somebody crashed right there, too.
I will say this. They definitely need to fill those potholes because the interstate is a disaster. Okay. Yeah, Huckster Head Part 5. Oh, you know, but we haven't even got to talk about our top 40 retro gaming YouTube thing yet. We get to bring that up on here.
Yeah, make sure you mention that.
Oh, are you kidding me? I've got a few topics I want to get to. So what?
Okay.
How do you want to play this? You want to go mail time first?
Yep, and then I'll kick it over to you for the news.
Kick it up old school.
And then I'll kick it over to you for the game.
You'll
Yeah,
kick
I'll
him,
just-
kick him a few times.
Keep kicking.
Like a horse, I'm behind you.
What up? What up, chat folk? And we got y'all up late. We are we're on dumb guy time or whatever. We're slow out of the gate today.
All right. Yeah, Chris just said that he did the self-setup thing with his Pi. So I guess if you're into that sort of thing, then you can do it. But I'm into not that.
What I'm into, Mr. Dude's awesome, man. Yeah, that's what I'm into.
Like I said, I mean, he had a blank RetroPie set up and everything. He had to make the folders himself. And all that.
screw
That's what I
that.
was looking at. It was neat.
No, I got all the ROMs downloaded already. I'm ready.
Okay. Do that thing with your hands again. No. The rubbing of the hands together. I'm just curious. Okay. You can really do that as much as you want.
I don't do
Before
that
was
much.
always-
I've been trying to make myself not
you've
do
definitely
that.
gotten a lot better at it.
My hands haven't been as bad as they are today. Today, I emote with my hands. Boat.
I know.
Boat.
This,
I'll sign those cards wherever I choose.
that picture, or in the intro video where you're doing the Last Ninja, and you're really making some important point. You're doing.
Listen, I learned a lot from speech. I learned how to get right out of college. Bam, I was out of there.
All right, here we go. Hi everybody, welcome to Amigos. I'm John,
And I'm Aaron.
And I'm John again.
and we're here to talk about Waxworks. But before we get into the work of wax, we're gonna do a little mailbag, Aaron.
All right, man.
So, we got some feedback on Twitter. Danny Hudson, he says, amazing to think that some guys from the U.S. talk about the computer I played on in Sheffield, UK back in the mid-90s. Still love Amiga to this day. Great pod.
Oh, that's nice. Did you ever live in Sheffield?
That's where I lived when I lived in the
That's
UK.
what I thought. So that's nice. One of your people over there.
That's right.
You're a transplanted Sheffieldian.
I am.
What do they call themselves?
You can
over
tell by
there?
the accent that I was
Is it
born and bred
Sheffieldian, Sheffieldites?
there. Northern is what
That's
they call
all.
it.
Well,
Yeah.
there you go. That's easier.
So, Aaron, we got a piece of physical mail in the
Okay.
mail.
As opposed to metaphysical.
As opposed to metaphysical mail. This is a letter. This is from Erky. Erky.
Not Urkel.
Not Urkel. He's
right.
not involved.
So
Hi,
we
John.
got wait a second. How's it go? You actually got a physical letter.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. That's great.
Hi, John and Aaron. I started following your podcast back in the beginning of 2016 and have been a loyal listener since. Whenever I create a new playlist of last week's Amiga and retro gaming related podcasts for my iPod, Amigos episodes get dragged to the top of the list every time. My name is Erki. I'm originally from Estonia, but currently writing you from Toronto, Canada, where I've been temporarily residing for the past few years. He goes on to talk about how he got into the Amiga relatively late in the mid-90s and had an A500 and then a stock 1200 and then a 1200 with the Blizzard 1230 with 16 megs of fast RAM. He used it for BBSing and browsing the web, accessing FTPs and IRC chat rooms. And he says that he believes that Amiga's eyebrows was even, it's funny, eyebrows, but it's eyebrows.
Cute.
Was the first browser on any platform to provide tabbed browsing. Interesting.
Sounds like a study up sort of a gimmick there.
Yeah.
Get on it, boat.
He says, about Amiga days in Estonia, I remember buying Amiga format magazines from a mainstream newspaper outlet, and there was a commercial game called Rockets, spelled cool guy style, from a team of Estonian developers. It is quite polished and offers loads of two-player fun. So we'll have to look at Rockets to see what was going on the Estonian Amiga development
I like
scene.
that.
And he says he currently has several updated classic 68K systems and even 2 Macs running registered Morph OS. So he is hardcore Amiga power, and he's provided a breakdown of all of his systems and all of his things, so we can take a look at that later. And he says, P.S. I got you guys some tasty treats.
Oh boy.
Okay, so
Uh-oh.
I'm going to unwrap one of these and give it to you because I don't want you to read the label.
Okay.
Okay.
Look what he's
Dundersalt
doing.
again.
Look what he's doing to me. You know, I believe I spoke with this fellow during my fighting game stream.
This is one that is broken, so I will give you another one.
Are the candies just loose in there? Or are they in a package? This makes me even more nervous.
Just pop it in. The whole thing.
Okay. Go ahead. What is it?
This is vodka. This is vodka-filled chocolate. What do you think of that?
Give me another one.
All right, I'll give you another one. This is a liqueur-filled chocolate.
You're a fine man. You knew what to send me.
John?
A lot of people look at the fatness and think, I just send this guy any old candy.
Interesting.
It takes a true professional to look deep inside of me and understand my deep-rooted alcoholism that goes along with the weight.
Ooh.
Now, unfortunately, a lot of these broke in the mail.
That is unfortunate because, man, this right here is what are these insured for?
But what's funny is that the alcohol, of course, immediately evaporates, and you're just left with the good chocolate.
Isn't that bizarre?
Wow.
Those are great. You know, that's straight up booze.
Yeah.
That's not like booze flavored topping.
No.
That's got a kick. I like them.
So,
What a great gift. Thank you. Thank you.
It'll be interesting to find how those are made to keep the alcohol in there.
yeah. So, if you were wondering, because I know several people have tried to send us alcohol internationally in the mail before, all you have to do is just encase it in chocolate.
Get one of
and
those
it
huge
comes
chocolate
through,
bunnies, you know, for Easter, and just to cut a hole in it and just tip up a fifth. Tip it up. The tipsy rabbit.
So thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ericy, for that. That was
I'm not
very
100%
kind
sure,
of
but I think I talked to this guy, and like I said, on one of my streams. So.
you. Yeah, and it was so nice to receive actual physical mail of
When was the
any
last time you
kind.
got a proper letter?
I know.
I know, it's great, isn't it?
And after the show, we'll he's got a lot to write about. He thinks that we should do another Amiga FPS show, and he's got reviews of all of the 3D first-person shooters.
Good Lord.
Yeah, so
Bring this guy on board.
Yeah, he's
Make room, John. You get another seat right there.
So thank you, Ericy.
Yeah, man, we appreciate that. That was great. Very good. Tasty.
All right, Aaron, are you ready to dive in to the world of Amiga news?
Dive in. Before we dive into the Amiga news, I want to dive into related, because we've been, I'm not going to say we've been off for several weeks, but we've been ignoring the news for several weeks. And so one thing that released while we were out was the Commodore 64 Mini. All right. Now, I've seen many reviews, and I've seen many people talking about it. These aren't available here in the U.S. unless you have them shipped in. I don't know, have you looked into this thing at all, or watched any reviews, or seen any gameplay footage? Either one of you guys looked into this at all?
I've read some reviews, but I have not looked. I've not seen any gameplay footage.
I've watched a lot of it. I'm not going to go into a big review here since I don't know how to play one, but they look okay. They look okay. I've heard the joysticks aren't great, and I've heard there's some lag between the stick and the actual unit. But they're attractive little units. They're well boxed. I read how expensive it would be to ship one here, and it's pretty expensive. I think it's like $150, something like that, that's pricey,
yeah,
you know, for a unit. So I don't think I'll be getting one. Plus, again, given the limitations of it in comparison to something we can emulate it. Hey, and plus I've got a couple of C64s, but it's a nice unit, and I think it's doing well, and so. I would like to see I'd like to see this grow into something for the Amiga. I believe the outfit that did this is the same bunch of guys that were working on one of the ZX Spectrum clone devices. I think it's the one that fell through, the handheld unit. I can't recall what that was called. Again,
was that the Vega?
The Vega. I think that was that one. And I believe I read that they had a deal with the C64 that involved Cloanto as well.
Really?
Which opens the door to the possibility. I think these are selling well. I mean, everyone's been talking about them. I've seen them everywhere. Yeah. So, we got into this in our New Year's Eve predictions show, but I think now I feel even stronger in my stance that there might be a mini Amiga in the future. Would you buy one of those, John, if it came around? If you could get a mini Amiga that had, say, like 60, 70 games on it that you could just plug in HDMI, would it be something that would interest you as a consumer?
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got the 500 and the emulators and such, but
Do you think
yeah, it'd be for a
your average?
standalone.
Do you think your average Joe would buy one if they saw it?
I don't think so.
You don't think the boat?
Not in this country.
So you think the chances of it getting released here is a 0, which I agree. Because if they didn't release the 64 here, now they may be doing an import, or maybe someone will start selling them eventually.
Well, yeah, you can buy them right now for sale in the United States. You don't have to get them shipped here.
Where can you buy them at? You mean at a store?
Not at a store, but there's places to buy them online that are U.S. based.
Oh yeah, but I'm talking like these are apparently they're in all the stores over there. It'd be, which would be great. Like I went and got Teresa the Oregon Trail game. If it was like that, you could go buy one.
Yeah.
That would be great, But we're out of luck on that. So.
Yeah. However, in the UK and in the places where the Amiga was huge, then I could see it more.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Part of the appeal of the C64 is that it does have a very distinctive case, a very distinctive color scheme. The brown on lighter brown.
Yeah.
And the Amiga really just sort of looks like a brown.
Brown on lighter brown.
It just looks like.
What if it was the 1000? It's pretty cool looking. Oh,
Yeah,
you're right. I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
Hope springs eternal.
That's
I would
right.
like to see the Amiga in the hands of the common man. Mm-hmm. I feel like we're the podcast for the common man, and we're rooting this on. Thank you, fanfare for me. So, speaking of fanfare, we're not even going to wait. We're not going to put this off. Let's just talk about it now. The big news, Boat. In a stunning turn, as I mentioned on our various accounts, the Amigos Retro Gaming YouTube channel has been named one of the top 40 retro gaming YouTube channels by FeedSpot. Now, FeedSpot, renowned, huge, everyone, it's a household name. And
Did you post this on Google Plus?
I did. And we have been named, it was a while back, weeks and weeks ago. I think I did. It's on Facebook for sure. But we have been named by these fellows, and it came as quite a surprise to us. I had looked into FeedSpot to figure out what they were all about, and we looked at the top 40 to see who were in there, and sure enough, every retro gaming site that you could imagine was there. I think right there you passed it. There you go.
Oh, that's it.
That's
I
it.
was expecting the
Boat's looking for it on the screen. Yeah, I think it was in both.
I thought you were going to post the thing that special medallion.
Oh yeah, if they
that
made us a
sent
special ribbon. Now,
Yeah.
but if you flip down to the first couple of names on here, you've got your usual suspects: the angry video game nerd, Pat the Punk. I'm not going to read these, but I'll listen to some of these, like GameSack, Gaming Historian, a lot of good guys. And so, to Kim Justice, who we both love. Do you listen to any of those guys or read any of those? No. We barely staggered in at 39, but hey, we'll take it.
We're right in between Retro Gamer Girl and just retro gaming.
Yeah, hey, we'll take it. It was.
You know what I think happened? I think that they found probably 35 podcasts, and then they're like, "Man, just type in retro gaming."
Now listen,
and take the last 5.
Now wait a minute. Now I thought that way too at first, but I went and looked. First of all, this is a legitimate web page.
FeedSpot is legit.
And secondly, if you Google retro gaming, 4 billion channels come up on YouTube. So I'm going to take it at face value.
Okay.
And say that we were honored, and it is an honor, to be one of the top 40 retro gaming channels as named by FeedSpot. And not just us, but also Retro Hour is in there. They're in the upper 30s. Or 31, 32, something like that. So they were also repping the Amiga. I think there was, I don't know if there's any other Amiga reps up in there that are strictly Amiga. Well, then again, I guess they're not strictly, but they're close.
Neither are we.
Well, that's true. So it was nice. I thought I'd mention it. I was happy.
Yeah.
And I could tell people. I could break the glorious news that we'd made the top 40.
You tell the world.
Hey, this year 39, next year 38.
That's right, baby.
Let's do it, man. So, everything else after that is going to be lamer news, but we'll go ahead and go into it, man. So, let's talk about this article here, and I think you may have posted this one, the History of Amiga Part 12, Red versus Blue. This is that This is the continuing saga on Ars Technica. I have not gotten to read this. How was it?
Chris Folds posted this, actually.
Oh, I'm looking at it on Facebook where someone else posted. So have you got to look at this one yet?
Yeah, so I have not read this, but I know I will, because this is a very long-running series. We talked about it before. This started in 2007 on Ars Technica, and I've learned more from reading this series than any number of other Amiga books / articles online. I mean, it's just a really fantastic history that encompasses the entire,
Yeah, they do a great job. They do a really good job with that run, and it really is quite informative. Another one from Folds. This probably hits close to your heart, Boat. The Art of Point-and-Click Adventure Games, the book.
This is Bitmap Books. They've stumbled upon a formula that seems to be working very well for them, where they basically just, they write short articles about games, and then they take really high-res, blow-ups of different screenshots and things like that. And boy, this really looks beautiful. This might be the first one of these that I buy, just because there are so many. Remember that video that Brutal put together, the 40 Amiga point-and-click adventure games?
Yeah.
There are so many games that I had no idea existed, and of course the packaging with this is just beautiful.
It looks nice.
Yeah, it's such an awesome title. Now, it's not cheap. It's £30, which is going to be close to $60 US, or if you want the special DOS style game box with it, it's going to set you back 50 quid. So
that's a few bucks.
Yeah,
a few bucks American. But hey, at least it's an option, right? That's you like that stuff too, the point and click stuff. So you can imagine there'd be some pretty good art in there. So yeah, and again, I've heard good things about it. And you're right, they found the niche. There's a group called ECW Press. They do wrestling books like autobiographies. It's the same sort of thing.
Is the name ECW like public domain now?
Well, it stands for Not Extreme Championship Wrestling. I don't know. Yeah, I'm the same way. I thought, well, that's weird, but yeah, it's that they've done a similar thing. They found the niche of wrestling fans, and they're just feeding them biography after biography and stuff like that. So it's kind of neat. So let's talk about this. Here's another one, and this is one of our boys. This is Chris Folds posted this one up. This is from Duncan Styles, our good and dear friend. His review of the Cyclone RX. It's been used quite a bit amongst our folks in the Discord, and it's a joystick adapter, effectively. And he posted this on our site, and it lets you connect a PlayStation 1 or 2 controller to the Amiga. I saw a guy selling some gimmick like this a couple years ago in one of the I think it was EAB. That it would let you hook a joystick up to it, and you could use the PlayStation joystick as like a mouse and a controller. But anything that lets you use anything you want on the Amiga is good by me. And PlayStation has a good quality gamepad, so sounds good to me. I've got the NES adapter on mine.
Super NES.
Super NES, excuse me. It's funny. I have that. I've had it for a while, and this is completely separate from that. I find myself almost always using the CD32 gamepad on it.
Well, I mean, you've got it. It's there, and it's more authentic.
No, it's not that. I actually like it. I mean, there's something mentally wrong with me.
Well, no,
I really, because it's universally hated. But I mean, and mine, you shake it, it makes a noise, right? Only the best. Much like most of my computers and everything else in my house, but you shake it, you hear a little clicking in there. Whatever fell out in there, not important. But I do enjoy it. I like the way it feels, so I've been using it more and more. Of course, I've got the trusty Wicco as well that I break out.
Piece of garbage.
Oh, how dare you, Boat?
No, the Wicco Ergo is fine. It's that red-handled beast.
Oh well, that's your opinion, of course, and your opinion's wrong. So Duncan again, man, he's been a machine.
Yeah.
This is handy. Where were you, Styles, years ago when I first did this? He's put up a video here, how to set up an Amiga compact flash drive using WinUAE. I'll tell you how. Lots of sweating, lots of furrowing your brow in a vain attempt to understand. That's how I did it. Lots of reading 20-year-old documents you found in the back half of a forum somewhere.
Look how pretty that photo is,
yeah.
too.
Yeah, he did a very good job on this stuff. And man, I mean, it's. Have you ever set one of these up, haven't you? A compact flash?
No, not yet.
I mean, it shouldn't be tough. You know, everything involved with hardware on the Amiga is like impossible. It just never. I swear to you, every time I get a problem, I'm just like, no. It reminds me of pinball. It's expensive. It's impossible for you to get parts, and it's complicated every single time. And this is no different. So let Duncan hold your hand and help you skip through the path.
Man, thank you so much, Duncan, for putting this guy together. I guarantee you this is going to generate a lot of traffic on everythingamiga.com.
Plus, old Aaron is getting ready to go down that road again. So, yeah, I'm not looking forward to that. We should also mention that the huckster, Gary Hucker, put up episode 5 of Pimping Out the Amiga.
Ooh.
Yeah, he's at it again. In fact, since we've talked, he may have put out 4 and 5. He's been putting those things out pretty regular.
Yeah.
And of course, Gary, he knows what he's talking about. He's the man. So if you want to watch him do his thing, pop one over. I think that one came out last week. Don't hold me to that. I think that's when it came out. It's fairly recently on that one. Let me see if I've got anything else here. Bo, you did a couple streams in the past week. You want to talk about those?
So yeah, every once in a while I'll stream out a lot of NES, Super NES. I just got as a generous gift from Amigos fan Christopher Hassel, aka Hasifa, sent me a SNES Mini, so I did a big stream on that, showing that off, and of course it's all hacked up now, so I've got NES games on that too. But Aaron, really, you're the star of the streaming show now.
Oh yeah, I'm really going crazy with the streams.
So you've done a couple. You did a Super Retrocade stream. And you also did at least a couple Amiga streams.
We did.
Really well.
You know me. I love the old fighting games, and so I thought, I'm going to sit down and play a bunch of Amiga fighting games. And so I started at Street Fighter and went all the way through all the Street Fighters that I could. Then I went through the Mortal Kombats and a couple other wackier ones, and had a good time just streaming. Streaming to me is not something I've done that much, so I'm trying to get into it a little bit, and it's fun. And then one night, I mentioned this a few months ago, I made the idiot purchase of buying a Super Retrocade, and lo and behold, these things are suddenly in vogue. People are they're going crazy for them.
Right.
And I thought, that's weird, so I thought, well, I'm going to try hooking this thing up and just running through some games and seeing how they play, and I put that up, and I was surprised how much people cared about that, because it's not necessarily our bag, but it was fun. And I've got a guest coming in next week, and we're going to play all the rest of the Amiga fighting games 2-player, and then we're going to go and play a ton of arcade fighting games and stream that one night. It'll be at the midnight special one night. We'll sit around drinking and playing games. So that should be fun. But yeah, just for fun, I'm trying to get into streaming. It's actually pretty fun. I enjoy it. It's nice to have that instant feedback too, when someone can say you're dumb. I guess what they want to. I think that is just about it. I don't know if there's anything else here. There's some. Oh, how could I forget this one, Boat? Speaking of Laserdisc games, which we weren't, but
Super Don Quixote is
Super
back.
Don Quixote on the Amiga. No, but one almost as obscure, Road Avenger, is now playable on the Amiga. I've played Road Avenger. Have you ever seen that one? They didn't have that one up in Charleston. Sort of an obscure Laserdisc racing title. It's wacky. I know it from I believe it was out on the Sega CD is the place I remember it from. Not in the arcade. But lo and behold, they've actually ported it over to the Amiga. So if you are feeling froggy, you can give it a whirl. I think I saw some people out actually playing it. I have not tried it yet, although it'll be on my short list to give a shot. We should probably also mention, while I'm thinking about it, our sister show ARG Presents out right now is our wacky, zany TurboGrafx 16 episode, Bo.
Right, one of my favorites that we've done so far.
That was we had a good time with the TurboGrafx. It's a great machine, and I enjoyed your game despite myself, because I was sure it would be crap. And, of course, I enjoyed my game because I picked it. Have you ever played the TurboGrafx before, man?
No, I remember when it came out, though.
Really? Did anyone you knew had one? Did you know anyone that ever owned one?
I don't think so.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it did not do. It did Amiga CD32 levels of bad in the States. Well, actually, I guess it wasn't even released, so it did better than that. But it was a lot of fun. So if you're into TurboGrafx, check that out. And then we are just hot off the presses off the newest ARG, which will be breaking out. I believe that'll get released next Wednesday, Boat. Is that right?
That's right.
And this episode will be arcade games. Me and Boat went to work on some arcade games, so we threw some of that together. So that should be a lot of fun. And upcoming in the future, there's some really interesting stuff coming up on ARG that should interest all of our European listeners.
Absolutely.
So that should be a lot of fun. I think that pretty much breaks it down, Boatster. If you got any other news?
No, I think it's time to jump
Oh, wait.
into...
I did forget one thing.
What's that?
Our special guest, John, here, donated a hefty supply of what I'm hoping will be Amiga whitener to us, and so I'm hoping next time he comes around, we're gonna get crazy and dump some cases. What was that stuff called exactly, John? For people at home that might want to give it a shot.
Salon Care 40.
Salon Care 40.
Hair developer.
And give a brief description of how you'd use it.
You just basically coat it with a paintbrush or something like that. Put plastic over it so it doesn't evaporate, and set it out in the sun is what most people are doing. It takes about 45 minutes to whiten, something like that.
And so it's like Retrobite, but cheap and better.
You just don't have to mix it.
Yeah,
and it doesn't include OxyClean or anything like that.
And tell them about the key thing you told me.
That's the 8-bit guy video that I saw where he was heating up distilled water to 170, putting in the liquid version of Salon Care 40, soaking the keys, and it takes about 15 minutes, I think.
Just dump the keys right in.
Cool.
So
love it.
We may give this a crazy shot.
I did hear about somebody that was trying it on a case in a larger version where they heated the water to 170 and said they got case warping.
Oh, well, we don't want that.
So they went back to using the Salon Care with plastic on it.
And the good news about it is that once we finish whitening all the cases, then I'll have all that Salon Care for my beautiful locks.
That's right. You're flowing.
Suds it up.
They did say, though, there's a problem with evaporation. If you let it evaporate completely, that it ruins it. But I'm not sure about that. They said that it's permanently coated with Salon Care.
Ooh,
you can't
boy.
get it off. So that's why you have to put the plastic over it.
Have you ever considered dyeing your beard just a snowy white?
Dyeing it? I would never dye my beard. I'm a real man.
I would love to see you walking in here like Gandalf one day.
I've dressed as Gandalf before. It didn't go well.
Why not?
Because Gandalf's not a fat, bald dork. That's why. Gandalf's a sleek, like silver, like cool guy.
You know what they say? The first steps is the beard.
I'm more like the Andre the Giant of the Hobbits. That'd be me.
Man, that's a great Halloween costume.
There you go.
All right, Aaron, it's time to talk Waxworks.
It's time to talk Waxworks.
So, just wanted everybody to know before we jump in that this game was suggested by Amigos Game Selection Committee member Adam Battersby. He has selected this game to be his game for the month.
Yes, and tell them how you can become a member of that elite squad.
If you would like to support Amigos, you can go to amigos.com. Nope, that's not right. You can go to patreon.com/AmigosPodcast. And there are multiple levels you can support the show with. But if you select the Amigos Game Selection Committee member level, then you get to choose one game a month for us to talk about on the show.
You know, I've got a cunning plan.
Okay, I'm all ears. Go on.
We both have trouble with that, and I really have trouble with these URLs. We should buy up everything that has Amigos in it. Mm-hmm. And that way, no matter what we say, you know, Amigos t-shirt.uk.co, and that way we're covered for our various screw-ups.
Aaron Dowdy got paid.biz.
That's right. Money.com. Let's talk about Waxworks.
Okay.
First of all, have either of you ever been to a wax museum?
No, Ripley's, that's as close as I've been.
That's pretty close. What about you, Boat?
I have been to Madame Tussauds in London.
The #1 wax museum probably on the planet. And so how was it?
It was amazing. It was amazing how real everything looked.
Is there a horror gallery in there?
No, not really. It's not like the one at Ripley's or this one, at least not that I saw. Now, maybe there was like a pathway somewhere that I didn't see, but this was mostly just celebrities. I mean, I remember they had, what's his name, Patrick Stewart, Audrey Hepburn, Pope John Paul II, Oscar Wilde, Ollie was there. I mean,
no zombies, no
And the
no
thing that's
mummies.
cool about it is they let you get right up on top of these guys. Like you can put your arm around them.
Really?
You can, yeah. And so
That's crazy. I wonder how long those things last.
I don't know. I was shocked that they let you get as close to them as they do.
I've been to a couple of wax museums, not of that quality. Your beach variety, your crummy amusement park variety.
I think that the horror stuff, because it is sort of mangled corpses and stuff, it's easier to get by with a less skilled artist.
Yeah, you're probably right. Because if they botch, you just feel like that's a scar.
Right, exactly.
That's a good deal. So, with that in mind, this is a game that begins, at least, in a wax museum. Waxworks, again, this came out in 1993, developed by a nutty outfit called HorrorSoft. Now, we have a checkered past with HorrorSoft.
I wouldn't call it checkered. I'd call it black.
Boat actually hates HorrorSoft. I that have a soft spot in my heart.
Well, you remember what HorrorSoft was before they were HorrorSoft.
What were they? They were Tinsoft. Well, Tyne.
Okay.
I know what you're going to say. I mispronounced it.
What do you know why I know you mispronounced it?
Because I did it the last time we covered this.
And do you know why I know? Because at the beginning of the games that they made, when they were Tinsoft, they say there's a voice sample that says Tinsoft presents.
What have you played that was from them?
Oh my gosh, you don't remember?
No. What did we play that was from them? I remember HorrorSoft, but I don't remember Tinsoft.
Tinsoft were the brains behind first-person pinball.
Oh gosh, no wonder you remember
when you
that?
Say, I remember lots of things from
Man,
this show.
that is creeperoo.
A game like first-person pinball doesn't leave.
I mean, I remember the game, but I don't remember that.
So when you say we have a checkered past with them, it's not checkered.
You're right. I left that one out.
Black.
Holy smokes! Well, they also, folks, they were responsible for the beloved, highly regarded Elvira series, and which I liked way more than Boat, but still not much. And these guys, amazingly, would go on to be AdventureSoft, and they would do all the Simon the Sorcerer games,
which were much better.
And something I found out, and while we're here, we'll go ahead and mention it. A couple of the guys that were basically the brains behind the outfit, the designers, were Mike Woodruff and Alan Bridgman and Simon Woodruff. This is sort of a family affair. You had a couple families that were running this. But here's the interesting thing for me. I didn't know that until this episode. Mike Woodruff was one of the producers behind Call of Cthulhu: Dark Corners of the Earth, which is a tremendous game.
Why have we not done that on the show before?
Because that's not an Amiga game.
Oh.
That was many years later. It's probably there's no probably to it. It's my favorite horror type game of all time. You ever played a Cthulhu game? I'm a big Cthulhu guy. I'm a big H.P. Lovecraft guy, as we've covered. And this was a great game. So and unfortunately, it was the game that ended his company. So unfortunately, but still, much like this game ended HorrorSoft. So this was published by Accolade. I was going through Accolade's what they'd published over the years.
They've really gotten a lot of accolades over the years.
They've got a lot of good games. Okay, you got your Fourth and Inches. Cool game. I mean, it's old but fun. You got your bar games. I love bar games, as you know.
Love bar games.
You got your hardball series. Love the hardballs. They were fun, right? You got your Star Control, right? You got your Jack Nicklaus Golf, right? I believe one of your favorites.
I do. I like it a lot.
You got your Test Drives, and you got your Mean 18, which is a good golf game. So that's a lot of good. And they did like 50, 60 games, or something like that. But those are all top shelf titles.
I'm sure there were some not so top shelf, but
I picked out the best ones.
The cream was really.
I picked out the best ones. This game, another neat aspect. It was in you got your English, French, and your German. All right, so it's got multiple language. Actually, believe it or not, I loaded up the German one accidentally, and I was really puzzled. I was like, "What in the God?" So but this would probably be a pretty easy candidate for that because most of it's a visual. This ran on the ECS, OCS. It came on 400 discs. Now, right, it came on 10 big discs. 10 is my limit on discs right there.
Is that your limit?
And
9 is fine, but 10 is too much.
And I was thinking to myself, holy smokes, to sit and play this on disc would be unbelievable monotony of swapping discs. I mean, of course, Monkey Island came with a bunch of discs. There's a lot of games that came with a lot of discs.
Monkey Island is a slower-paced game. This is not a game you can hang around in too long.
No, you cannot, as we'll get into. So, what is Waxworks? Well, and believe it or not, one of the things I will give this game credit for, it's got an incredible backstory. The game tells you the backstory. Basically, you come up to this waxworks and wax museum, and this big bruiser. It looks like if Riff Raff were on steroids. This big monster.
Lurch-like.
Yeah, he answers the door, and he's expecting. And the gimmick in this game is you're a half of a set of twins, and your family is cursed. And every time twins are born into the family, you got a good twin and you got a bad. It's like me and Brent. Right? I'm the good one. He's the bad one. But unlike Brent, the bad one gets a lot of stuff done in this game, and he does a lot of evil, and so the curse continues. And so your ancestor contacts you in this crystal ball and says, "Listen, you need to go back, and you need to stop this crap. You need to go through and you have to go back. We're going to send you back in various time periods, and you're going to correct the scummy things that your ancestors did. And the portal to get to these various places is the Wax Museum, and it's in exhibits that are held therein. Right now, it mentions that you should have read a letter before you even play the game. And so I thought, well, I'm going to go back and take a look at this letter. Let me tell you something. This ain't a letter, brother. This is a freaking novella that they wrote. It was long. I mean, they must have. I mean, it was the longest docs I've ever seen on an Amiga game. And I thought, holy smokes, they really poured it into this game in terms of the backstory to it. And so, what you've got here is a point-and-click game with some wrinkles. It's a lot like the Elvira games. You can move around with the on-screen arrows. You can use a keyboard, and you've got a cursor on the screen, and you've got a window that has what you're seeing. You've got a directional pad to like your middle right or middle left. That also can be a compass, depending on what you want. On the right, you've got like a representation of what your hands and some other stuff you can do. And at the bottom, you've got your inventory. Pretty simple, straightforward stuff. And then there's a window on the right that when you touch something on the screen that will give you choices like to examine, to open, to do whatever, a little menu will pop up and give you those choices written out on the side. It's a pretty good system. So we'll start off with just talk about the system itself. I liked it in Elvira, and I kind of like it in this. In terms of, I think the drag and drop inventory is cool. I've always liked it on the Amiga. It's a great thing. And the directional pads everything works like it should, with a but, which I'll get to. Now, just in terms of the interface, what are your thoughts?
I thought the interface was fine. I thought it was I thought it was good. It's a different take on movement than, say, a game that's not first person.
Right.
But I think that they did it just about the best that they could as far as the interface goes.
Sure. So here's the thing that the interface has that I don't like, which is not the interface's fault. This is your typical point-and-click Elvira type game where really they're all the same. You advance sort of like a screen at a time, and so visually the screen in front of you will update. So if you're walking down a hall and there's a door at the end of the hall, every time you click forward one, you'll basically go up a step,
right,
a grid space, or whatever you want to say, till you're at the door, which is fine and dandy, but it is confusing as hell. I was lost all the time. Now, what does that mean? Well, that's not unusual, and this is a game where it literally tells you, get out a pen and paper in the docs. You're going to be writing some maps up. It's old school, right? But man, having a point of reference in this is difficult, particularly given the various adventures you go on, because your environment is very similar. I mean, it is ridiculous.
Some stages are worse than others when it comes to that, too.
They're all bad. I can't think of one that was less bad than the others. I thought they were all bad. Go ahead, let's hear it.
The Egypt stage is the worst by far.
It is.
Because there are no guideposts at all. Like this, you've got different storefronts. Some are lit, some are not.
Well, let's go over what your various missions are in this. So when you go in the Wax Museum, the crypt keeper guy says, "Listen, you get to pick one of these things." So you've got some choices here. You've got there's an Egyptian exhibit where you can go back and try to thwart your ancestors' plans there. Then you've got a Jack the Ripper sort of affair where you go back and basically try to stop Jack the Ripper because guess what? He's one of your ancestors. You've got like a mine that you go down where there are these weird mutants that are down there. Again, the same difference. You're going back to stop them. And then you've got like a graveyard. Right? Now, when you go up to these exhibits, there's a little plaque you can read, and you can literally click on it and enter. There's a flash of light. You go in and you start. You start somewhere on the map.
Right.
So, just as an example, if you go for the graveyard one, and you're in this one, I believe you're going after a necromancer. You appear in the graveyard. It's night, and everywhere around you are graves, and you start in the middle. That's it. Mm-hmm. You've got nothing. And it's your job to go to this graveyard, explore it, and try to figure out ways to do things. For you guys that have listened to our shows before, you'll recall that I'm not good at doing things. The first one I chose was the Egyptian one. All right, I appeared. I walked 2 steps down the hall. An Egyptian came up to me and dropped me like that, dead as a doornail. That was the level. That was my experience with the game. And then there was a grotesque scene of me being all dead. So I thought, well, screw this. I'm going to go to the mine. I went 2 or 3 spots. A weird mutant came up and licked me a few times. Then my guy broke out with a hideous rash and he died. That was the end of that. This game's tough to get started on. I like the fact that they present you with 4 different adventures to start off in. I think that was cool. It gives and doesn't limit you to which portal you go in. So you can pick the portal you want to go into, which is cool. If you get frustrated on one, you can go to the other one. You can save your games, which is fine. It's just the actual gameplay that is puzzling to me, because in a game, say like in most of these games, you're not really in a real-time situation, right? At least the ones I've played. I'm probably sure there's some. So you can sit there and at least try to figure out what you're doing. If you're trying to map these levels, like I was drawing a remedial map, and I'd be drawing this map, and here comes a bad guy, and then you're running. Well, then you're confused
because then whatever you've drawn means nothing.
Right?
Because you've left the area,
and it drove me absolutely nuts. And I spent I'm not gonna lie, I spent a very frustrating week trying to beat at least one of these worlds. And I finally gave up and watched a walkthrough, which I hate to do on these, but we talked about it. I mean, sometimes you don't have a choice. And I watched a walkthrough, and after watching that, it didn't help me one bit. It's still difficult as hell to get around, even when you see someone else do it. So yeah, I was frustrated. What do you think? What did you think about it?
Yeah, I think any game that requires you to really make a map of your surroundings or be aware of your surroundings in a way that it's not immediately apparent, but at the same time constantly puts the threat of death upon you is gonna lead to a frustrating experience. Because like you said, if you're trying to play the game the right way and build a map, and I realize that you can find, like in England you can find a map, but you're not going to find it right off the bat, that's for sure, and you're basically trying to wander around these dark streets. You can't fully experience the environment because you're always on the run. Now, I understand that they want to create an intense, environment, and they want you to feel scared and be on the run. But if they did that, they should have provided an in-game map for you to negotiate.
Yeah, that would have been the bare minimum for me. Would be an in-game map. Now, a lot of games of this year did not have an in-game map.
What year? This is 1993.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, it's in that.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is a game where you can see where they did it.
Right.
This game may be responsible for the in-game map feature because.
Well, it's funny because I was streaming this, and one of the people in the chat, it might have been Henrik or Eric or somebody, they sent me a link to some, I think it was Czechoslovakian Amiga magazine that actually had the maps plotted out. And man, these maps are huge. I mean,
really?
These areas,
it's hard to tell how big they are.
I mean, I guess they were plotted out square by square, but like in the Egypt map, there's no way I would have ever figured that out on my own. It's crazy.
Well, what really is frustrating to me is underneath all this, there's a very intriguing game to a certain degree. The plot is interesting, I think. Now, I think the Waxworks angle, you could have really strapped anything on the front of this. Really, they don't use I would like to have seen them use the wax works as something. I mean, you could have said, okay, you've got a time machine, you've got a magic book. You could have used anything. Really, the wax works, it's just sort of a way to have a hub to go to these different places.
I think it's pretty creative.
It's okay, but I mean, what do they do with it though? You have the exhibits. That's it.
Yeah, but I mean, that's,
you could have been in a museum. It could have been anything.
Right, but I mean, it's in video games too often. It's just like, oh, here, take this. Here's this time machine, and you can go back.
I guess if you're gonna do a wax, I want to see like a guy getting thrown in a vat of wax. I want to see a guy. I want to see someone like melting, and there's a person in the wax. You know, something like that.
Okay.
Some more wax stuff.
Okay.
And they didn't. You didn't get that.
Yeah, none of that.
The graphics. Now let's talk about the graphics. Now, because we've been killing this thing. The graphics in this thing are great. They were done by Paul Drummond, Kevin Preston, Maria Drummond, and Jill Wall. These are some top shelf graphics on this thing. There's some animated graphics. The animation with the crystal ball, there's a guy inside of it talking. It's freaking awesome. When you bamf into an exhibit, there's a sort of like a flash. It looks great. It's really cool. When you die in this game, which this game, I guess if there's anything known about it, is the death scenes. They are, which you'll see them. No wonder they spent so much time working on them, because you get killed in every conceivable way. Throat slashed, junk cut off, melted, burned, all kinds of crazy ways. And there are some awesome scenes of your death. It reminded me of like the 3D point and click, or the 2D point and click version of Dragon's Lair. Just like everyone likes to see dirt.
A much gorier version of that.
I know you're not a big fan of the gore. Was it over the top for you?
Well, this is. I mean, I've got to recognize this game for what it is. It's a horror title.
Right.
The developer is HorrorSoft, so I mean, you expect there to be gore and blood and stuff like that. You expect yourself to go to a grisly demise. So it didn't bother me, because that's what you sign up for when you play this game.
Well, I mean, it definitely it's way like Elvira had a couple of things like that. There was some gory, but this is like
that's its calling card. Really.
Yeah, it's way over the top on the gore on this thing. You'll be surprised to hear this one, Bode. There's an outfit out there that's working on a sort of a sequel to this, believe it or not. It's called Waxworks Special Edition. All right, the outfit is called Want to Play. Now I checked, and because they've had this license for some time, and they had updates to the work on this game as of October of last year. Pretty close. So get this. Now listen to this wackiness. It's the same game, but they're going to use the Unreal 4 engine. All right. They're going to have new maps. They're going to have a mini map like we were talking about. They're going to have better animation. They've got some stuff they've already done. It's got a 3D user interface. It looks good, just from what they've shown. It could never see the light of day because this company must be super duper tiny. But as of, like I said, last year, they were still working on it late last year. So, might be kind of neat. If they would make this game with a in-game map. The graphics weren't the problem for me.
Right,
the map is the thing. You put an in-game map in it, that'd be cool. Now the combat, we should probably talk about the combat.
Actually, that was a huge stumbling block for me.
Let's hear your thoughts on it.
Because I read and I was told in the stream, they're like, well, you can attack different parts of the body in this.
Right.
And you can do this and that. I wasn't able to do anything. I was just jabbing. I was trying to move the mouse in all different kinds of ways, and I just got destroyed every time. I mean, I did manage to beat the Egyptian in the one of the Egyptians, but there's multiple Egyptians, and you lose health and you don't get it back.
Yeah, well, you do get it back if you level.
Yeah.
Or you also get the guy in the globe to give you some health back.
And that's another thing. Before we talk about the combat, this game, your experience is calculated in an odd way. You basically gain experience by walking around.
I noticed that. You really should, in this game, just by not dying, you should get experience. That's the way I looked at it. Just you've got the experience of seeing a few extra seconds of nothing before you get killed.
Right. Oh, it was Hasifa that sent me. Christopher Hassel sent me the link to that Czechoslovakian Amiga magazine.
So. The combat in this is actually kind of cool, and if you know what you're doing, it can be real cool. I was watching a guy online play it, and he was blocking and parrying with a knife and all that stuff. You do get to attack, like, for example, when you went to the graveyard, did you ever see the zombies?
Oh, I saw a lot of them before they destroyed me.
If you get I think it's a sickle, you can whack these guys, and it's cool, and they actually take damage, in a way.
Right.
And but you can actually hack off an arm, and they're still fighting you. You can hack off their other arm, they're still trying to bite you, and then you can finally cut their head off. And you don't have to do it in that order. I saw the guy in the video cut their head off, and they're still punching, and kicking. So I thought that was kind of cool. The combat is weird. It's odd to have a real-time combat in a game like this. It's almost like this game's sort of like if you watered down, I don't know, like Eye of the Beholder, basically, and then. But I mean, I don't even know if you can do that in Eye of the Beholder, target a specific area. I don't know.
I don't think so.
I kind of like it, but if this was a little more fluid, and I'm not sure I want this in my point-and-click adventure either, because there's a certain element here of a lot of people that play these aren't necessarily good gamers. In terms of Twitch gaming.
The reason why I got into these, as a kid was because I wasn't the best video game player, and this was something I could beat. All it took was time.
Yeah. So that's sort of a pick your poison. If you're into that kind of real-time combat aspect of it, you might dig it, and if you're not, you might hate it. What did you think of the music in this? I found an interesting tidbit out about
the music was. I mean, I could tell that they were trying to create an atmosphere of suspense,
and it does change occasionally. What's
like when you in the England level, when you go into the bar, you hear that ragtime music, or
right?
Whatever. It was fine.
So get this, the music's it got from a dude named Jazz. Is it Jazz? Jazz. Jezz. I want to make sure I read that right. Woodruff, right? He's a session musician who's played with Robert Plant, Black Sabbath, and other bands of that era. So they actually had a guy who actually...
That's pretty cool.
That's kind of neat. And the music was pretty good. Here's the bad part of the music. You would hear it
it's very
a million zillion times.
Yeah.
And since it takes so long for the music to change, for you to get somewhere important, it gets very repetitive.
Yeah, I'm with you.
That Egyptian music, I'm going to hear it in my sleep.
Yeah.
That was the only level where I had any good success, because you get a dagger early. If you have just your bare hands and you're starting to weld, you're screwed. I don't think you could beat anybody with your bare hands.
No.
But if you've got a weapon, you can get somewhere. So on that level, I was good at hacking up guards or priests or whatever came around. So I get to look at that level a lot. And it's a good looking, like I said, a lot of it's good looking. But man, that music really started to grate on me. The most frustrating level for me was probably the cemetery. That level, that cemetery is just so hard to move around in. At least in the pyramid level, you can go somewhere. You'll get to a point in the cemetery where you're trapped and there's a zombie on you, and you're just basically screwed. Yeah. And if you don't have it took me forever just to find a weapon in that level.
Yeah, I had that same experience.
In the level where you're Jack the Ripper, you have to. This is one of those games where you are stopping Jack the Ripper. People think you're Jack the Ripper, and so you have to go. There are things. This is one of those games where you have to have knowledge. And you have to be very mindful of what people are saying. So, for example, there's a puzzle in it where you need to get this address book from a pimp, right? And so you go to the bar and talk to the bartender, and he says, "Watch out for that guy right there. He's a purse snatcher." So then you have to have the right trinket to get this purse snatcher to go over and steal the pimp's address book to get the address. I would never have thought of that in 10 million years.
Right. It's a game that. They were really, it's very ambitious in all of the things they were trying to shoehorn into this one title.
You play a lot of these games, okay? Did you find these little puzzles more difficult than they are in most games? I played Monkey Island. I got halfway decently through that one.
Monkey Island is one of the easier games of the genre.
I need those.
Things really went off the rails at this time in adventure gaming, and that's part of the reason why point-and-click adventure games went away, is because the puzzles just got way too esoteric. There's a classic example of you have to shave the cat to get the cat hair to tape it onto your driver's license to disguise your ID to give it. That was a puzzle.
What game was that?
That was one of the.
Shaved your cat?
Yeah. I'm serious. So things got bad.
Yeah, so this is where this game is where we're heading to that.
Yeah.
Because it seemed to me like the puzzles are really tough. And when I say puzzles, like I saw when watching a walkthrough, there were a guy that actually got to some puzzles. I never saw actual puzzles. I was just trying to get.
They're not really puzzles. It's just like it's like having it's basically a lot of trial and error. You know, click on this and then click on that, match this to that, offer this guy this thing, and eventually you work it out somehow.
Well, overall, to take this to the house, I like the subject matter. I like the plot. I like the fact that they put a lot of thought into it. I like the fact that it's a dark game and it lets you pick your own levels. I like the graphics. I even sort of like the combat, but I wish it was just combat or the puzzles, but not both. If it was a game that was strictly a combat type game, I could probably get into it a little bit more, where I could have a little more success. I don't like the not having in-game maps. That was the worst. The repetitive music, the huge leaps in logic. It's just too hard for me. I'm not too big a man to admit that I just couldn't figure it out, man.
Yeah.
Your thoughts? Final thoughts? Yeah. This reviewed pretty well back in the day. Amiga Action gave it a 91. Amiga Computing gave it a 94. Amiga Format gave it a 72, so they didn't get it. CU Amiga gave it a 91, and the One gave it a 78. So you've got...
Still, though, those are relatively high scores.
Where would you rate this? I mean, I know we don't review games, but in terms of like a letter grade, since you're a teacher, where would you put this one? This is kind of one of those wacky ones where it's tough.
Yeah. I'd probably give it a B. I
would probably give it a C+, just because it's the good parts of it are weighed out or similarly weighed with the bad parts. So to me, it makes it sort of average on the whole.
Yeah.
I eBayed this bad boy. Believe it or not, I found a copy of this in the States. It was the discs only, $10, $1 a disc, not bad. In the UK,
did they come with a rubber band around them?
they did. They actually had the code wheel too, which is surprising. This does have a code wheel, which is hacked out of all the cool versions at the beginning. And then the UK, of course, as always, it's a cornucopia of goodies over there. Eight American dollar bill, so it's a £5, something like that. You take it to the house in the box. Now, if you're in Germany, you've got someone looking to score. The only one I could find, and he's been running this thing day in, day out for a year, 145 US dollars.
Wow.
So I don't think I'll be picking this one up in German.
No.
But yeah, it was an interesting game. It's I don't know if I'd go back to it. It was much more fun to watch than it was to play, that's for sure. And even it wasn't that fun to watch due to all the running around the maze. But
yeah,
you can't have them all. You can't win them all, Boat.
That's right. Speaking of winning, I'd like to announce the winner of last week's Patreon song challenge. This is actually 3 weeks ago now, because we had our little.
I can't even remember what the song. Can you do a little bit?
The song was. Oh man, I can't even remember what it was now.
I'll put you on the spot.
Yeah, I can't remember what.
Was it Nirvana? Was it that one?
No, whatever it was. I think it was Tom Petty.
Oh yeah, that's what it was. Free Falling. I won't back down.
Yeah.
That's right.
Did
you get it?
Yeah.
I'd like to congratulate
First couple of notes.
Darren Coles. Well done, Darren. You are the winner this week. Your favorite episode was the 2018 New Year's predictions episode. So
really?
I created this custom card for you here, and that will be sent to you in the mail soon. I'd also like to thank Ed Van Halen for also entering.
Eddie Van Halen?
Eddie Van Halen. Before we get out of here with the Patreon people, I'd just like to remind everybody that if you'd like to buy some Amigos apparel, like both John and Aaron are wearing, you can check out our store at tpublic.com/store/AmigaTees.
Wow.
Or you can just go to tpublic.com and type in Amiga Tees. We've got a whole wide array of both Amigos shirts and ARG Presents shirts. Don't forget to check out our sister show, ARG Presents, where we talk about systems that aren't the Amiga. And finally, don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and Google+.
And YouTube.
YouTube.
Sign up for our page, man. We're getting somewhere near 1,000 subscribers.
Absolutely.
And I think we get a pony if we get 1,000 subscribers.
YouTube sends you a pony.
Yeah, they do. Class. Hey, who was it that was wearing your shirt?
Oh, that was John Cook.
John Cook. And tell him about this shirt. I'd only seen that one picture of it.
So this is a newer design on our store. This is a based on one of our ARG Presents episodes, our Game Boy episode.
It's the one where you yelled at me.
Yeah, it's
You
the
yelled
one
at me
where
because you
yelled
thought
at
I was
you.
bad.
So it is Zelda is not an RPG. That is the
Look how mad you are on the shirt. That was exactly what happened.
yeah.
I thought he might strike me, John. I'm
So-
glad you're here now to keep him, in case I badmouth something else. He's very passionate about Zelda,
So
that RPG.
you can check those all out over at TeePublic, and of course, every purchase you make helps support the show. Aaron, it's now time to thank our Patreon supporters.
All right, man.
All right, so this week, again, the song challenge is on. If you know the name of this song, then just send us an email. You can send it to john@amigospodcast.com, and I will choose a winner from the entries to award a custom Amigos postcard. So make sure you mention your favorite Amigos episode and your mailing address. So, here we go.
Oh, God, no.
Wait a minute, I forgot what I was doing. Oh, yeah.
He beat him so stupid.
Dan Ross, Leaf Kalana, Kebab, Donatello, Levelord, John Marshall, Matthew Perrin, Ricky Durisho, Gippy Dead Boy, Figure C, TZ, Slow, Norris, Stephenson, Gordon Mortensen, Edvin Helen, Blender 75, Christopher Hassel, Rivy Abbott, Chris Foles, Dream, Catcher, Orange, Rue, Graham, Bebke, Brent, Daddy Lane, Denson, Madam, Matters, B. Joe, Brian's Retro and Vintage, Gary Hucker, C. Brian Jones, Paul Harrington, Duncan Stiles, Anthony Chavez, Tapes from the Crypt, Josh Nan, Will Williams, Adam Battersby, Jonas Rulo, Tia Shiak Nelson, Kim, Tommy Humbert, Stad, Daniel Banks, The Brutal Barracuda, Darren Wolves, Jason Warren's Pixels at Dawn, and Kjell Bjorn Barman.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right, so again, if you know
Wow.
what that was, then you send your responses to john@amigospodcast.com.
Unfortunately, you deafened all the listeners when you were beating your chest like a gorilla.
Well, I was going to do the I was going to accompany myself.
Is that what you were going to do? I thought we were going to leave the room when you started doing that.
Aaron, next week
Yes.
we are going to play Hired Guns.
Hired guns.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, everybody,
I've heard good things.
Thank you so much for joining us. Remember, we record this live every Friday night at 5:30 Eastern Time. We record this and ARG Presents back-to-back. We'd like to thank everybody that was in the chat with us this evening on YouTube. We've got Eric Sundstrom, Duncan Stiles, Steve Rasmussen, Pixels at Dawn, Hasifa, Zerfall, UK Retro Gamer, anybody that I might have missed, thank you so much for...
John?
I've already got one entry.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Live on the
So,
air. Someone's
live on
did
the
they get
air.
it?
They got it.
Wow.
But I'm gonna pick the names randomly so as not to be unfair to those
That
that
is
might be
incredible.
listening later on. But
And he knows it too.
Yeah.
He might just hit you later and just take it.
so thank you all so much for listening. Thank you for supporting the Amigos and all of our wacky endeavors. We will see you next week. Until then, adios. All right.
Wacky endeavors? None of them are wacky. They're all solid gold.
Thanks, guys. Have a good evening.
Solid gold. Bye, guys.